Board of Education meeting is now called to order. Welcome, everyone. Okay, make sure we are. I will start off by passing the meeting over to Dr. Wilson to go through some announcements.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to make the following announcements and let you know that we had some Hastings students who have been selected to the New York State Conference of All-State Ensembles. This is quite an accomplishment for music, and only the very top students in the state are selected. This year, those students will be Bria Simon in mixed chorus, Ruby Pasillo in jazz ensemble, and Anyavan, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Staten. She will be in the chorus. This year as well, I'm very happy and proud to announce that there are 6 National Merit semifinalists. This is a very great academic achievement. 6 students who meet this criteria really are a lot for a school district this size, and more than we usually find. These students represent the top 1% of participation of the PSAT, and the names of those students are David Danyan, Aaron Foreman, Emma Liu, we have Merknan Fokin, Elliot Reisman, Tremonte Enya Ustraten. So we congratulate all of those students on this outstanding accomplishment. District enrollment figures, as per the most recent counts, are very robust this year and exceeded the projections in some cases. And I'd also like to mention that the faculty did extremely well on the APPR performance scale this year. I know there's been a lot of interest in the report from SEPTA parents and others who support our needs, our identified students, and the programs that support them. And there have been many changes and improvements that have been made this past year since the report was filed from the audit that was conducted last year. Tonight is the first in a series of reports that will be made on the special ed program and the changes and improvements that are underway. I should say that the director, Laura Sullivan of the special ed, and her assistant of special education, Tesfa Stewart, that these two have been working very hard to improve the program, especially in the past year. Due to the length of the report, I must ask everyone to withhold questions until they complete their presentation, and then by all means there will be time for comments and questions, Q&A, that they can respond to. I'd also like to thank the principals who are here this evening, and to mention that they are also involved in the, of course, special education program, working to improve that program in their buildings as well. Our main purpose tonight is to inform all concerned about the progress that is being made and the new direction that has been taken in special ed. Everyone will also find a document entitled Special Ed District Plan tonight. That is not really connected. As it happens, we're presenting them to you in tandem, but you just need to know that the study that was done and that has been followed up on in the past year is entirely separate from a document that's called the Special Education District Plan, which is a requirement of the state that every school develop and file. And we put that in. It's been in for a couple of meetings now, but we've never gotten around to have the board approve it. Nothing has to be filed with the state as much as we have to be able to validate that it has been approved by the board and that it is on file. So that document will also come under discussion. But I think first what most people are interested in, we should really focus on for tonight, is the special ed audit and what's been done to respond to that. I should also like to point out that the individual that many of you will recall, Dr. Laura Katzman, was the consultant who conducted the report and developed the report based upon the study that was done. She is currently planning to be in the district, come back to the district in the month of October, and to interview and to meet with people to ascertain the progress that has been made based upon what were her original, I should say, recommendations. She will be here to see what progress has been made, and she then in turn will prepare an updated report in November, and she'll be back down here at the very beginning of December the 3rd, and will be in attendance at a board meeting which will be publicized, and that will be her official report based upon the study coming back here and reporting on the progress and anything else that needs to be emphasized in her judgment. So these recommendations will be very important to hear from her at that time. I want to thank again, express thanks again for your interest and participation tonight. I hope that you're going to find the evening to be very informative in terms of where the program has been, where it is now, and where it's headed into the future. Again, there will be one opportunity an opportunity for the board and the public to comment after the presentation is completed. Laura and Tesla, we thank you for being here tonight, and please, by all means, we're going to make room for you, and if you want to come up front, and we're going to have this, I believe we're going to telecast this, as well as the fact that you should have been able to pick up copies of the report when you came in.
Come next time. I think I called.
How about we get it?
Yeah, you definitely need a microphone.
Okay, so thank you all for coming out for us tonight. Tess and I have had the pleasure of working together for 1 year, and jumping right into working on the audit, which we interchangeably refer to as the action plan sometimes, but it is the audit from Dr. Katzman. So we put together a presentation on the 6 recommendations. So those of you that remember, we did a presentation last February on the recommendations. We kind of focused this presentation into 4 different categories. What we've achieved but is ongoing, and that is just what never stops. It's never just gets a checkbox and gets put on a shelf. It's something that we will continue to look at and evaluate on an annual basis. What's in progress? New initiatives, that is, those were things that kind of, those we look at are great things that came out of the audit that were not in the audit. They were kind of aha moments that as we were going through, they either came from the community or they came from staff members or administration, in terms of it wasn't recommended, but as we were doing all the good work, we realized, well, maybe we want to look in this direction, or maybe we want to go down this path. So that's where the new initiatives came from, and then our soon to come are some things that still need to obviously happen, because it was a pretty hefty audit.
Right.
If any of you took the time to,
right.
I know we all read it.
It was 62 pages that we tried to condense into these 6 different slides. And you pretty much touched every target point on the audit, but we figured this would be a little easier to digest in this format.
So the first recommendation was to create structures at the central office level that promote greater collaboration among those responsible for the teaching and learning of all students. This is really your central office, your systems, your structure. That's basically what Dr. Katzman was talking about. The areas that we consider to be achieved is that Tessa and I have worked on clearly defining our roles and responsibilities of myself and the assistant director. We've also worked on a draft, and we really put draft in bold letters of the vision of special education.
Everybody should have a copy of that paper. It's the first page, but I'll show you guys the document here. I put a hyperlink in it.
This came from feedback from the superintendent, administration, staff members, and parents. And we pulled it all together. We met on numerous occasions, and then just even out of other meetings when we were talking about standard operating procedure manuals or just building our continuum or looking at our resources, Tessa and I would always kind of just take notes and jot down things of what we heard were recurring themes. And this was what has come out of it. So again, it is in bold as a draft. We worked on it over the summer, and then our intention is to continue to work with our community, with all stakeholders, and eventually come up with a finalized version of the vision.
And this is something that's, we put in, it's living, so whatever our vision we define for this year doesn't necessarily mean it's going to meet the needs for next year. So it's something that it's achieved, but it also should be ongoing because it's going to be based on the needs of the students that we have.
We've also developed and implemented systems to track and monitor missed mandated sessions. This was done a while ago, and this came out of where years ago there was an issue with speech and language sessions being missed. So we put systems in place and policies and procedures to ensure that that is being tracked and monitored. We've clearly defined the roles of our teaching assistants and teacher aides. And this is a little bit, when I talk about this as your central office, your systems, your district level, is that the Board of Ed has has approved the process to begin a search for the Director of Curriculum and Instruction. And the roles and responsibilities of the Director of Curriculum and Instruction has been shared by the Superintendent with the Board of Ed, or will be done at some point soon. I think you're doing that shortly. So that's really in the structure piece of the district piece of what we see as being an overarching achievement. Where we see is continuation of evaluation of the roles and the responsibilities, and that includes my role and Tessa's role. We've done a couple things that you'll hear as we go through the slides. One of the things was Dr. Katzman wanted us to really look at what I was doing, spending my time on, and at the time what the supervisor was. So we've done some restructuring with that, and that's where our roles and responsibilities are evolving and will continue to evolve.
As far as in progress, these are things that we are still working on. We're still, hopefully, we want to finalize this vision and get it up to date as soon as possible. So that's still in the process of finalization. The draft is there. We're going to, we're open to any more feedback, but we want to get this finalized as soon as possible. And then we want to clearly define the roles and responsibilities for the entire department. So, Laura's roles are defined, my roles are defined. Now we want to bring it from the top down to make sure everything is clearly defined and everything is lined up. New initiatives. So I'm a new initiative, obviously, me being here. And we also increased our support through district psychologists. I want to say 3 new psychologists, but they're not, because James was here from last year, but we do have 2 new psychologists that are on board and district-wide, so they're going to help support the CSE process and just to support children in general. Soon to come, like we said, hopefully we'll have the Director of Curriculum and Instruction. And also, aside from the special education vision, we want a district vision to sort of coincide with our special education vision and mission statement.
So to summarize, number 1, we see the positive of this recommendation is to really bring general education and special education together. And I think we've done a great job. Often special education in any avenue, in any district, is often out to the side, and that's just what's happened for years and years and years of society. And I think Hastings has done a great job of pulling it together, and I'm looking forward to the Director of Curriculum Instruction to helping us to move that along forward. So, number two is create systems that support effective management of special education supports and services. So the things that we considered to be achieved on here was, it was recommended for us to look at the occupational therapist. We have occupational therapists and our behavior therapists are not on staff. They are contracted. So it was just recommended to look to see, does it make sense to have them become part of a staff, or should we continue to work with it in a contractual way? We did some research, we spoke to many people, and it really seemed to be an overwhelming response to maintain with what we have because of the people that we have. So we have 2 outstanding occupational therapists, and if we were to move in a different direction, part of what we would lose is those 2 people, because they are contract and they are tied to an agency. So this is really when you talk about relationship building, and there are parents and there are children that have had experiences with these 2 individuals, and to lose them to change a structure didn't seem to make sense. So I think it made sense to just continue to what we were doing. So that's why we were recommending to maintain the contract with our occupational therapists. We did increase our speech and language therapists. There was a need for that, and that also helped with the missed sessions. They still work very hard, and they've still got some, tight caseloads, but we were able over the years to increase our speech and language therapists. We did restructure the roles and responsibility of the psychologist to build in more time to directly support students' social emotional development. This goes back to the presentation that we gave in February, where we talked about mental health and all the concerns that were coming out of that. And our psychologist, Dr. Katzman, pointed out that our psychologists were really doing a lot of work, a lot of good work, but a lot of work. So with the increase in the district psychologist, we're going to move the 504, which is a role that the school psychologists were doing. They were chairing our 504 meetings. So these will now be chaired by our district psychologists, in addition to running program reviews, annual reviews, which will support TESPA and I, which was also part of the audit, that we were running too many meetings. And then going back to the psychologist, by not having to run 504 meetings, it gives them more time to really be with students and provide that direct contact with students, which is what we need in today's age with the concerns about mental health. We are proud to say that we've drafted 2 sections of the SOPM, which is a standard operating procedure manual. This was done with a great deal of support from all of our stakeholders, and it was also based off of the community feedback that we put in our year-end survey, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And 2 of the pieces, both pieces are out with the attorneys for legal review.
One came back. The student placement, that came back, and we're waiting for the referral process to come back from the lawyers just to make sure they proofread everything, and once we get those, we'll update that to the district website. The referral process was very helpful because SEPTA really supported us with that. We had a couple of meetings, and they really helped, give us the legwork to really get that done. But we're glad that we have those 2 documents done, and hopefully sooner than later, you guys will have a copy, and will be publicly posted for everybody.
And the nice piece about the SOPM, and we really went back and forth about this a lot over the year, is that this is going to be a pretty hefty document, and TESPA and I could have sat down and written it by just copying and pasting from the laws and all the legal pieces of it. But what we felt was important is that we wanted it to represent Hastings, and that's what is making it a little bit of a lengthier process. But by working with the community and the stakeholders in school and out of school, it's been really helpful to take those laws and the legal pieces of it and kind of Hastinize it and make it a little bit more user-friendly. We also implemented Centris and IEP document repository. This had something to do with our data. and I know many of you have heard this before, so I apologize, but it is on the achieved list, is our internal systems of our student management system and our IEP Direct system, which is what we use for all of our IEPs and managing that system. They were not connecting. They were not connected at all. So it was causing a great deal of work on two sides, and people were having to do double the amount of work, and then when things are not connecting, errors are coming up. So Centris merged these two management systems together, and it was a real, it was a lot of legwork to get it going, but this transition was really smooth, and it's been up and running, and we've had it for a year, and it's been successful. And another thing that we actually should have put this part on the new initiative, which came out of it, was also an IEP document repository. That is where we have paper copies of any evaluation, anything that is done, any testing or any outside evaluations that come in, and we have them in folders. And if anybody wants to see them, they have to come to our office, and they have to open the filing cabinet. It's locked, and they have to sign it out, or they stay in the office and they look at it. Now we have used a secure system where it's uploaded, so you can now go on, and when you're looking at your child's or your student's IEP, you can see all the testing that was done, which now allows us much easier if a parent or an outside psychologist that a parent is working for wants us to send a report to them. It's just a click of a button rather than us having to go and scan it in and then emailing it to them. And then where there was the implementation of the Google Classroom, which was what the buildings did on their level, which increased data and communication and support systems. And then we have a description of the programs across all three of our schools.
So this is, I'm sorry.
Nope, jump in.
No, this is also going to be part of the SOPM, and we work with the buildings, we work with the parents, work with the teachers, and this is on the district website, I'm pretty sure. I'm hoping everybody's looked at it already. If not, look at it here. And this is updated. This is every single program and service offered in the district, and when you get a chance, you can go take a look for yourself, but this is it here.
And it's a description of a K-12. So even though we have some programs at elementary, middle, and high, what this description is really does kind of encompass as much consistency and continuity across the district. So ongoing, we will continually monitor our teacher coverage practices. That was something that was brought up in terms of substitutes. The buildings are doing a great job of being creative, and when we have teachers that are out. So I think that's something that we're just always going to. Every district struggles with that, and I think it's something that the building administration has done a great job in terms of being very creative. Is what it really comes down to. We are ongoing is annual transition meetings with staff members between buildings. So the elementary schools, the 4th to 5th. Actually, there's 5th to 6th. Then there is 8th to 9th, and then even within your building, sometimes you have transition meetings, but we definitely have transition meetings between the staff and the teachers. And you'll notice if you have a 4th grader, the 5th grade, there will be 5th grade representation at your 4th grader's IEP meeting, and if you have an 8th grader, there will be high school representation at your IEP meeting. We have developed a clear continuum of services, which I think we presented quite a bit in the spring. We worked on them, and that came a lot from the help, again, of the staff and the buildings and the community. And I think it was exciting because I think we were very creative, and we were able to add a lot of great programs, which we're going to discuss in a little bit on a different slide. And again, that's ongoing. Every year you have to review that. Every year you have to look at that, because it really is based on the needs of the cohort and the needs of the students. So it's something that I can't say it's going to look like it does this year. It's going to depend on what our projections are and what our student population is. We started a Special Education Today newsletter, which has improved our communication. So Tespa and I did that last year, and we sent out 5 of them. You'll get your first one at the end of October.
No, end of September.
End of September?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then we provided professional development to special education teachers throughout the year, and what we focused on was the writing effective IEPs. And that was the PLEPs, which is the present levels of educational performance, the goals, the program modifications, and testing accommodations. So we worked with teachers, grades K through 12 together, and we really went through the IEP and talked about what it needs to look like, what it should look like, and that will continue. We have 3 late starts. The buildings have, I think, 8 late starts. They've designated 3 to just where they're doing building stuff, but we have our whole special education team, which is exciting, so we'll be able to continue this good work as we go through.
So we're continuing to obviously finish this SOPM document. That's still ongoing in progress. And we also are working with the MTSS, which is the multi-tiered support systems and RTIs, and we'll talk about that later in a further slide, but we're still in the progress working with the building principals on that. The new initiative-wise, we have 2 new programs that we're using to collect, monitor progress on IEP goals. We're looking at GoalWorks and also IEP Direct, which is the program that we use, the software we use currently. They have their own internal progress monitoring system. So we're doing 2, one on the elementary level and one on the middle and high level. And then we're going to see which one works best, and based on that information, we're going to move forward to see which program we're going to move forward with ongoing. Soon to come, we're going to share the 2 parts that of the SLPM we completed, and that will be coming hopefully sooner than later.
Number 3, examine evaluation procedures and continuously monitor the number of students determined eligible for special education services and 504 accommodation plans under other health impaired, which is often known as OHI, and specific learning disabilities categories. So when Dr. Katzman came and she did give her presentation, she said that we have an over-identification of OHI. But she also said this is not uncommon. This is not uncommon for a Westchester school, a Westchester community, a Rockland community. She's in our socioeconomic status where we fall. She said this is very common to have an over-representation of OHI. For those of you, OHI is a medical disability. It's where anything that is medically diagnosed, we don't diagnose those. So we're not doctors, so we don't make any of the diagnoses in what falls under OHI, but it ranges anything from cystic fibrosis to ADHD, which is our most common one. And I mean, it could be, I'm at a loss right now for words, but it's any medical diagnosis.
Fever, nephritis, there's a large list of medical diagnoses that fall under OHI. Our
huge percentage of OHI is ADHD. That's really what we have. We have a couple outliers that are, different medical diagnoses, but our majority of them, more than our majority, is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So what we've done with that is we have reviewed and we have purchased evaluation tools to better support our classification decisions. So we've done a lot of looking at, are our children classified appropriately? And I just need to explain, there are 13 classifications that you're allowed to have. We are only allowed to choose from those 13. Some children fall into more than one category. You could have a speech and language impairment, you could have a learning disability, and you could have OHI, such as attention deficit hyperactivity. However, the state only allows us to choose one of those 3. And often that's where a lot of our great discussions come out of, because you're acknowledging that there are more than one, that children can struggle in more than one area. But as much as we celebrate the differences and the strengths and the needs, this is the one time that the state says, well, now too bad, you have to pigeonhole it into one category. So a lot of debate goes into that in terms of what do we think at that moment in time is the overarching disability that is preventing the child from accessing the general education curriculum. So often it changes. Sometimes they'll start out as a speech and language impairment, and then maybe they'll change to a learning disability. So that's the importance of doing a reevaluation at a minimum of every 3 years, because that's what we discuss again, is this the right classification? Have things changed? Do we need to change the classification? So we've made sure that all of our reevaluations, we've had really strong conversations about the classification. Is it the appropriate classification? And we've also spent some time on purchasing tools that have expanded our ability to look at different types of ways to really get to this child's strengths and areas of need. Often, sometimes, an evaluation tool can limit us to one focus point, and depending on how the child was performing, it can be read in different ways. So we've tried to expand our tools that we use in terms of doing the evaluations. During initial and reevaluation meetings, all relevant decisions were reviewed as...
Walk through with SLD.
I'm sorry?
You said what the specifics for OHI, but can you just explain that for SLD as well?
Oh, so that's
Learning disability?
Learning disability.
Are there
Yeah.
different types?
Learning disability just talks about, yes, there's lots of different types, but they fall all under that. So you can have dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyslexia, but they all fall under learning
I
disability.
know we're not doing questions now, but what...
We're not doing questions now.
ADHD was most common there, but what was the most common SLD?
We don't, so just as a doctor, a medical doctor diagnoses anything under OHI, we don't diagnose, and it's a new thing that has just come out, but up until this point, we don't decide if a child is dyslexic, dysgraphia, or dyscalculia. We just make the decision whether it's a learning disability.
Please continue with the presentation.
Okay.
There'll be plenty of time for questions later.
Ongoing professional development for TESFA and myself and all of the chair people. We met a lot to make sure that all of our CSE meetings were run very similar to each other. So we put plans and procedures in place to make sure that there was consistency. It didn't matter who was running your meeting, but you would see a consistent process. We also are monitoring the classification rate and categories. And knowing that there's going to be more people running the meetings, Tessa and I actually found one of our big folders that we used last year to provide our guidance for Tessa, myself, and James. We're going to be expanding on that for the 2 new district psychologists that have joined us.
So the new initiative, and I probably can speak to this the most because I work hands-on with this. So we had an over-identification of our Hispanic students that were labeled as speech and language impaired. And for about 4 to 6 months, we formed a committee. We looked at a lot of data. We looked at how we are really supporting these students and how are we identifying these students as speech and language impaired. So from that information and all these committees, we made a procedural document to see whether, and this is a deeper conversation we could have if people have questions, whether a child is suffering from language acquisition, meaning they're having difficulty learning the language, or if they have a disability that's prohibiting them from learning in either language. So that's a very clear distinction we want to make sure. And either way, how the children fall, we want to make sure we support them. So, and also I want to stress that it's not mutually exclusive. So you can be an ENL student or a student suffering from a language acquisition and still have a learning issue, or you could just have a language acquisition issue, or you could have a learning issue. So it can be any of them. But I want to show you guys this procedure that we worked with, that we're sharing with the staff on what to do before you refer a child for special ed if he's an ENL student. And it's a very long document, and we want to make sure that it's culturally appropriate, that we're touching every base to support these kids, as opposed to just saying, you know, the child can't learn, let's throw them in special ed, without really looking deep and understanding that child. And I think this document, what we want to do, we want to modify to fit any kid for any disability. But the study we had was under the ENL, but we're going to modify this to support any child. So just give you a quick look. We look at how long the child been in school, what supports, the learning style. So there are different strategies you can do before we jump to a special ed support. We want to make sure we cover all those bases for those kids. So it's a very long document, and it's shared on the link. So I just want to give you guys a quick preview of the document. And we worked with across all building levels, ENL counselors, teachers, myself,
And someone from New York State.
and someone from New York State. We worked together to craft this document to support these kids. And you know, the over-identification for Hastings, yes, it's, you know, the OHI, but, you know, there's also other socioeconomic over-representations throughout New York State, throughout the country. And we want to make sure that if a child has special needs, we accurately get them the support they need without just throwing a label on them. We want to be thoughtful with that. So.
The next one was to continue building in-district supports and services to support students who are currently educated in self-contained classes or out-of-school districts. So this was, I think we spent a great deal of time on this year, and the past years working with the community, working with our building administration, and working with our teachers. So the first thing is we reorganized and increased our psychological staff to support the mental health concerns. We have already talked about that. We also implemented the following, and these were big new initiatives, and they would not have been able to go through if we didn't have the support of our staff and our building administration, so thank you to everyone. Prior to my arrival, we had what was called parallel classes in the high school. They were very small classes that were for each content area, and we found that they weren't successful, that our students were not making the progress that we would have expected them to make in that type of setting. So we saw that where the biggest need was in social studies and ELA. So we created a special class. Special class just means that it is a smaller class. This one has a ratio of 12:1, 12 students, 1 teacher. And it is a focus on humanities, which is ELA and social studies, and we have them in grades 9, 10, and 11. They are not mixed, where often you can have up to a 36-month age mixture in classes, in your special classes. In the high school, your 9th graders are only in 9th grade because it is a reteaching and a pre-teaching of what is happening in their social studies and their ELA classes. And the high school was amazing at being able to get this a credit-bearing class. And for those of you that don't have high school children, it's kind of what's the big deal. But when you get to high school, resource room is not credit-bearing. So children who take resource room we have to watch their credits. We have to make sure we get them enough for graduation. So they were magical in making this special class humanities a credit-bearing class. So it actually does have its own curriculum. We also had pre-algebra. High school was also able to get that to be a credit-bearing class, so we now have algebra in 2 years, and that is ICT. So those that are coming in 9th grade that may not be ready to take their algebra regents at the end of 9th grade, they're going into pre-algebra. This we just started last year, and this will be the second, those that will be going into algebra this year. We added ICT Earth Science. We have ICT in 8th grade, because 8th grade is where all of our children take Earth Science. But in 9th grade, we do have children who are coming from other districts, they're coming from other states, and we are bringing back children from parental placements that have not had science. So we've now made our 9th grade Earth Science is an ICT setting, so we offer that support. We added a resource room to our elementary, which came from the parents at one of our coffees, so thank you to that. We added a special class ELA and special class math at Hillside. It started out as being grades 2, 3, and 4. And then this year, we broke it down even more to have 2, which is special class ELA math in grades 1 and 2, and then the same thing in grades 3 and 4. They spend half the day in a special class ELA math, and then the other day in the general education setting. It is very similar to what 5th grade has had for several years. And then again, out of the high school coffees came the ICT geometry and ICT chemistry, and the exciting thing about this is we're raising our level of rigor because these are not classes that children need to graduate. You do not need geometry or chemistry to graduate, but we made these classes ICT because we were hearing from parents, from the community, that they wanted a higher level of rigor. They wanted their children to have the opportunity to participate in these classes. So this is the first year. I believe, based on the background that Lou did, is that we are the only district in Westchester County that has both of these. Some districts have one, some districts have the other, but nobody in Westchester County has both ICT, geometry, and chemistry. Ongoing, again, we will continue to evaluate all of our current programs. We conduct site visits on all of our out-of-district students to see what's working for them and what we can do to bring back here. We're gathering projections to develop programs for upcoming school years. We do this early around budget season. We work with our teachers, we work with our administrators to see what does the cohort look like and what do we need to put in place for the following year so that they have opportunities to access and be successful. And again, as a result of that, our continuum of services probably will change. And that's what it should look like. It should change, it should have tweaks here and there because our students change.
New initiatives coming. So we are in the process of getting assistive technology certification training for the staff. So what that is, we'll have one trainer come in, they could train up to 6 staff members. Those 6 staff members will be able to do assistive tech evals, as well as turnkey and become trainers to other staff members. So we could build that in-house support currently here. We're also researching, looking into a therapeutic supportive program for the students here. And we're also researching how to restructure our 12th grade resource room to make it more applicable for life-ready skills, things that are moving on into real-world college, budgeting, to build on those skills in the 12th grade in the resource room. And that was based off the feedback from students and teachers on what they need in their resource room class.
Number 5 was to develop a high-quality and inclusive instruction with a multi-tiered system of supports, aka MTSS. This had 5 subsections. It had 5A, B, C, D, and E. So we've condensed it into one slide. The things that we have done in this area, we have increased in our behavior consultant support to have staffing for 2 days in the elementary school and 1 day in the middle school and high school. We have had our psychologist and our administration and our social workers attended a 3-day training on writing and implementing FBAs and VIPs. Those are functional behavior assessment and behavior intervention plans. Those are for children that are struggling with maintaining behaviors. We purchased programs to support various learning styles in the areas of literacy. So there is not just one way to learn reading, just as there's not one way to teach reading. So we have teachers and that are trained and certified in Wilson. We have teachers that are trained and certified in preventing academic failure. We have increased our Edmark licenses, which is just another way in which children learn. We brought LLI, which is level literacy instruction. We were using it in the MTSS system. We've now brought it into our special education. Today and tomorrow, we have 10 teachers. We've joined with 2 other districts, so we have 3 districts, to cut down the cost to actually bring in the true LLI trainers. And they have trained, we have representation from high school, middle school, and elementary school out of the 10. And thank you to the district for supporting. These kits are extremely expensive, and we were able to purchase 4 kits for our special education department, K-12, and they will finish their second day of training tomorrow, so they're excited to be implementing this. And thank you also to the district and to the Hastings Education Foundation for providing us a grant in order to provide training and the purchase of materials for Seeing Stars, which is another reading intervention that is otherwise known as Lindenwood Bell. Most people have known it by that. This is one of their literacy reading interventions. So we've really done a lot of great work in expanding our reading instruction and ways to meet those needs. And we'll talk a little bit about that in our new initiatives. We collected data on the certification and specialized training on all of our special education teachers. We have a lot of our teachers are literacy specialists. They're dual certified in special education and literacy. And I know it's come up, last year and this year, and we have many teachers who have been to the Windward training for the Preventing Academic Failure, myself included, Wilson certification, myself included. So we do have a very highly eclectic trained special education staff. Ongoing, in-house training provided by the 3 CPI-trained staff members. CPI is Crisis Prevention Intervention. It has been offered to all staff members. This has been going on for many years now. Most of our administration, our nurses, our teacher aides, and our teaching assistants have already been trained, and many teachers have. We offered this past June. We did 2 sessions. I think we had about 50 people trained over those 2 days, 45 to 50. Tessa was trained in them. We have Jesse Merchant, Dennis Kiley, and Dr. Scott Tesler are our 3 trainers. They go every couple of years for a 5-day training, and that allows them to turnkey and certify us. And the purpose of it is to de-escalate behaviors. What has also come out of this, I'm jumping ahead, am I putting that as a, we came out of it was we now have a restraint form, that if there is a child that is restrained, that's obviously our last resort. We have a form that needs to be filled out and documentation, so then our behavior consultant can analyze and look for triggers and patterns and things such as that. Continued professional development, which is provided by our behavior consultant. She has worked on teaching our teachers and aides and assistants how to de-escalate behavior and how to monitor the data collection of VIPs, which is, again, behavior intervention plans.
Just to give, I guess, people that don't know a little quick, so if you have a child that has a behavior, the first thing you do is an FBA, which is a functional behavioral assessment. That's sort of a study to see what the underlying cause are, what the triggers, the variations. Once you get that data, then you come together with the committee, then you form a plan, which is the BIP, the Behavior Intervention Plan. That plan offers strategies on how to deal with the behavior. So if you want to look at it in a sense, it's sort of like an IEP, just focused on how to address and deal with the behavior, just to clarify for people, because I know it's a lot of acronyms. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry for all of that. We've done professional development in-house and out-of-house in terms of best practices in literacy instruction. We have a reduction in our suspension rates. In 16-17, we had 5 special education students suspended. In 17-18, we only had 1 special education student suspended. We've had an increase in students with disabilities attending 4-year colleges. I want to just clarify, this is not counting 2-year colleges. We were asked to just provide data on 4-year colleges. These numbers would be higher if we included those that attend college overall. But this is just on our 4-year colleges. In 15-16, we had 66% students with disabilities attending 4-year colleges. In 16-17, we had 71%, and in 17-18, we are up to 73% that are attending 4-year colleges. Again, that's not including those that are attending 2-year colleges. We have many of our special needs children that are attending 2-year colleges as well. So we have a very high college attendance rate, but we were just asked to report on the 4-year colleges.
In progress, the building principals, they're working together, they're working with us, they're formalizing their MTSS plans on their tiered intervention. So MTSS, RTI, they're used interchangeably. The multi-tiered support system or the response to intervention, so the building principals are working with us and working together to finalize their plans or formalize their plans on that. New initiatives, in Hillside, they restructured their delivery of reading instruction. So the groups are smaller, and the instruction is more targeted and it's more fluid. So if a student is making a lot of progress, they can be moved to another group. If they need more support, they can be moved to another group. So, and it's all delivered prior to school starting it, and it's very smaller groups and it's more targeted.
Not prior, first thing in the morning.
First thing in the morning, sorry. And it's more targeted. We have a literacy specialist that's on the secondary level, and they're offering support. I know Lou and Gail have been working with her. And we establish procedures to, if a student requires a one-to-one aid support, we have procedures to document what's the plan for that student, as opposed to just giving that support. We want to see, is there a plan, and is there a plan for gradual release to get that independence for that student. So we just don't want to make them dependent on it. We want to be thoughtful with anything we do. And I think that's the main thing we want to focus with this action plan audit, is everything is thoughtful and strategic. We just don't want to do things to be reactionary. We want to do it with the long-term vision and plan. Soon to come, we're looking at our social emotional learning models and how it's improving student regulations, and we want to see how we can use that data to get a reduction of referrals with students with ADHD, and that's our main focus in this soon to come in the multi-tiered support system. Finally,
last one is 6. 6 had also 2 components, 6A and 6B, and this was to build positive relationships and communication strategies between the Hastings and the community. And I would love to just put a big old check on this one, because I think thanks to SEPTA, thanks to the buildings, thanks to the teachers, we've all been working so hard at repairing, building relationships, and I think we've come so far. So some of the things that we've done is in 2016 and 17, the district was assigned indicator 8. Every year the state randomly assigns a district a different indicator. Last year our indicator was to monitor to make sure that from the time a referral was put in place and we received consent to the time that the meeting was held, were we within our 60 days. Another year, it may be looking at our preschool.
Yeah, this year's early intervention.
This year is our early intervention. Last year, in 16, 17, the indicator was parental involvement. So at the end of the year, at everyone's annual review, whether it was a re-eval or an annual review, all of the parents were provided with a survey that they could do in paper or they could do online. And based on their results, we had nothing to do with it. I couldn't, bribery, nothing. They had to do it completely on their own. We had a 90.5% positive parental response rate at that time, which was exciting. We have a Google form for parent concerns. Tesla was here, and about 3 days after he arrived, he decided that parents needed access to us. So he put up a Google Doc that is on our website. So if you have a question and it's about special ed and you don't know who to go to, you can go to this Google Doc and ask the question, and we monitor it on a daily basis, and then we either answer it or we guide you to a place of where we can support it. We redesigned the case manager letter to include contact information. We heard from the community that parents weren't really knowing who to go to or who were their service providers, their related service providers. So we have we redid the letter to make it more user-friendly and more communicative. I'm going to have Tessa talk about this. This is just a survey.
We designed a survey. We issued it at the end of the year, one to the teachers and one to the community. And we just want to assess the areas of their satisfaction, the effectiveness, and areas of improvement, and see where they align as far as what the teachers see and where the parents see, and where we could try to bridge those gaps. That was pretty successful. That helped drive a lot of the work with the SOPM and a lot of the work moving forward with the continuum. And SEPTA was very supportive getting the word out, because, over the summertime, people are probably not checking their emails, but they were real supportive with helping getting that moving. We talked about the newsletter, the coffees.
Coffees are what we have 2 at each building, and they're run in collaboration with the parents, the SEPTA board, the building leaders, and Tespin and myself. So we have 2 of those at each building.
We meet regularly with the SEPTA board, and I know you're saying SEPTA, but seriously, they've been very supportive and they've been working hand in hand with us. We usually meet once a month, sometimes more as needed, but communication goes on more than just meeting in person. Emails, phone calls, so we have constant communication. We are implementing a special education district committee. We sort of had one last year. It started mid-year, but this year we started planning already to start from, I think we have a meeting coming up Friday to sort of hammer out the details of when dates we're going to meet and what's on the agenda. We talked about it several times. The community participation with the SOPM and the continuum of service was monumental. And you want to talk about the parent member training?
Parent member training. Parent members used to be it used to be a mandated member of the CSE committee was to have a parent member that was there. There's no longer a mandate to have it, but we still think it's important to offer it to our families. So the past 2 years I was trained to be a trainer of parent members. I went to professional development, and in the past 2 years I run 2 trainings a year for parents who want to come out. Obviously, you have to be eligible to be a parent. You have to have a child with special needs that is currently classified or has been declassified within a 5-year period. There's a couple things that make you eligible, but it's a great training. And then what it does is we now have our cohort of parents out there has grown in terms of if you're a new parent to the system or not even a new parent and you just want somebody there with you that has an understanding of what you're going through. They're there, they've been trained, and they're able to offer support throughout the meeting. So I know we sped through it, but...
Listen, I just want to congratulate Tessa and Laura. They obviously invested a tremendous amount, and they've moved the program. I don't think this was said at the beginning, but each one of these boxes represents a set of recommendations that came from the consultant, and you have faithfully work through each one in response to the recommendations. Now, the consultant, as we said, is going to come out. I know you're going to come back. You're going to keep everybody posted. I know you've got more work to do, but thank you for everything you've done. And at long last, Q&A.
Well, and I want to throw it maybe just out to the board for 5 minutes first.
Sure.
And then we'll kick it out to open up for public comment. Does anyone on the board have any questions they want to ask?
Well, I just want to get back to the question I had about the SLD was more about, you had mentioned that HDHD was sort of the most common thing in Hastings. I was just trying to understand, is it dyslexia here? Is that like 90% of SLDs or
I wouldn't know that because we don't diagnose that. So when we're making when I wish I had the definition of there's a definition for all 13 categories of the classifications. When you're making a decision of whether a child has a learning disability, it's not based solely on whether they've had dyslexia, dysgraphia, or dyscalculia. It is based on what is stopping them from accessing, what is in the way of them accessing their the general education curriculum. So we don't diagnose dyslexia. We don't diagnose.
Laura, is that a way to get away from just labeling? I mean, because wouldn't you need a diagnosis to know how you were going to
I'm just trying to understand.
Treat it, as it were. Not treat,
Are
but
all
the service that you
treated the same
provide.
way, or
No.
So don't you need to know, like, 80% of people here in Hastings have dyslexia, so that's where we should focus, or 20% have dyslexia?
We wouldn't know that because we don't do tests we don't test for dyslexia. We test for a learning disability. We don't have a test to...
How do you provide what the
services
should be if you don't know what they...
So if you have dyslexia, let's just say it's a reading, you're having difficulty reading. So what we've done is we have improved all of our different ways we've increased our programs in which children can respond. And even if you have 10 children with dyslexia, not all 10 of them are going to respond to the same reading program. You may have 3 that respond to PAF, 3 that respond to Wilson, and 3 that respond to Linda Mood Bell, and 1 that needs to take Edmar. So even having the diagnosis of dyslexia doesn't mean that this program is going to teach you how to read. So what we focused more on was how can we build our reading instruction toolkit so that we have lots of different ways to teach our children to read, because not every child responds to one program, whether you're dyslexic or not.
But wouldn't it help to have a sense of what the percentages are that...
So we don't diagnose dyslexia. We don't do that. Schools don't do that. So unless there was a private evaluation that was done...
It's kind of a black box of like trying to figure out what the services are?
No, because we understand that a child is having difficulty reading, so then we would put them, we would do some testing to see where is the breakdown. Is there a breakdown in the phonemic awareness? Is there a breakdown in the comprehension? Is it decoding? Like, where is the specific breakdown? And then that's where we start with the intervention. So it's more so about a focus on the intervention. It's the same thing if I go back to the ADHD. If we have 90% of our children in OHI that are diagnosed with ADHD, the ADHD isn't telling me how to treat the child. That's not telling me. It's just telling me, okay, I could fill a room with children with ADHD, and every single one of them are different, and every single one of them will respond to a different intervention. And that's where differentiated instruction really comes in, and the value of that. And that's where special ed doesn't fit into a box. And that's sometimes why it's so frustrating to us that we're only allowed to choose from the 13 categories, because there are not 13 different ways of learning. It's very, very much broader than that.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah, please. You can.
A student might have a disability, and it doesn't mean they require special education services. There are plenty of students that exist within their disability without the special education service. Like Laura said, where special ed comes in is when that disability is limiting them to access the general education curriculum. So if you have dyslexia, it doesn't necessarily equate you're automatically going to get an IEP, or if you have ADHD, you're automatically, or if you're emotionally disturbed. It's when that is impacting your access to instruction, that's when we step in and we give you the support you need, if that makes sense.
On the third slide, under the first bullet, you say that we will review and purpose evaluation tools to better support classification decisions. Can you just explain what those evaluation tools could be? New tools that are making you help you make better decisions. What are those?
So we found that we have children who are, their language delayed. So their language is not as strong. So when you have a child whose language is limited, you are, and you're giving them a educational assessment tool, unfortunately you're not getting the true, the true strengths of what that child has, because most of our tests are language-based. So you may have a child who comes up with an IQ that is much, much lower than really what their capabilities are because of the language deficiency, and that's what got in the way. And we felt that we really weren't giving children enough credit for what they actually knew when it was the language that was stopping them. So we purchased tools that were different ways to assess children that had that language barriers.
Thank you.
Just speaking with those tools, Laura, are any of those considered multicultural, or are we even exploring any bilingual assessments for our E&L population? Because I did know we were cited for over evaluating E&L students.
So I just want to clarify, we were cited because we were over by one student, not taking away, and it was an amazing experience, and I'm glad we were cited because it brought so much out, but we had such a small population that, you know, I don't want us to think that we were oversighted by such a large number.
Right.
But we were, and it was such a valuable thing for us to look at. What we did is we do bilingual assessments. We tried so hard. One of our criteria for hiring a psychologist was to be able to do bilingual assessments, because we really wanted to be able to do them in-house, because we felt that that would be much more valuable to us than sending them out. It was nearly impossible. We found one candidate. One candidate. So unfortunately, although it was one of our highest priorities and it was on our list of when we put out, I'm at a loss of words, when we recruited and advertised, thank you, it was able to do bilinguals. So it is absolutely on our mind. I would much rather have a bilingual evaluator in district than having to send out. I think it's more valuable.
Another thing we're looking at.
But we haven't to answer
So
the question.
are any of those assessments that you brought in multicultural in the sense of the way that they're presenting information in a not as biased way to our students? Because those type of assessments do exist. So I'm just wondering about the assessments that we do provide in English. Are those multicultural and sensitive to the different sort of backgrounds that we might be getting into Hastings?
I honestly don't know. It's a great question. So I think that that's something that we can follow up on. Unless you have the answer, I don't know.
Well, one thing, I mean, not with the assessments, but we are going to look at that, but as far as the home language survey,
Oh, yeah.
it gets very confusing to parents, and we're working on how we deliver that and having somebody sit with them as they do the home language survey to make sure that it's done correctly. I'm working with the E&L chair.
Right, but the home language survey is to see if they're eligible to be tested for E&L services. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our assessments when a child is referred.
Right.
Are any of our assessments multicultural in the sense of the sensitivity to the different cultures that are coming into Hillside?
We're working on that. So
Okay.
that's-
I don't
Thank
know.
you.
I don't have the answer to that, but I will definitely. That's something I can ask our psychologist to look into. And if you have the names of some that you're aware of, please feel free to email to me.
I have a few questions, I'm sorry. One relates to the OHI numbers, the other health impairments, and I'm going to be referring to that 5-year report as well, which I know it was attached, so I read it all. So I recalled what you had said, that Dr. Katzman, when she presented, had said we had an over-identification of OHI. And I will put out there, I'm doing my best to learn about all this, so I'm not fully aware of why that's an issue, but I know she flagged it as an issue. So, and the report that's attached, the 5-year report, the last page, Appendix E, gives a listing of how many children we have under each category. And when I saw OHI, it looked like a lot, and I tallied all the numbers. And what I found, if I'm reading correctly, it looks like we are actually, in terms of percents, because Dr. Katzman didn't give the raw data, she just gave percents. in terms of the percents, our percent of OHI has increased. So what I saw from Dr. Tatzman's presentation, forgive I'm reading numbers, at that point, the 32% were classified as OHI, and the next highest category was learning disabilities, which was 27. In this Appendix E, which I think you had said is a snapshot of June 2018, OHI has gone from 32% with Dr. Katzman to 37.3%, and the learning disabilities has gone from 27% under Dr. Katzman to 24%. But so the gap between the two has grown into double digits, and the OHI percentage has increased. Is that a problem? Is that an issue? I'm not really sure what question to ask except to put the data to you and just to say that Dr. Katzman flagged it as an issue, and to, again, the layperson, it looks like it's gotten worse.
So what I would say is I would remove the word worse, because I think what we did is we spent a great deal of time with families and with teachers to really look at what was the strongest disability. So again, we could have a child that was learning disabled and OHI, and attention, ADD. We'll just use ADHD as the example, because that's what most of our students are. And they may have, what we talked about was what was the disability at the time when we did this last year that was causing the child to not be able to access the general education curriculum. So what I would say is we've done a much better job through MTSS, through RTI, in identifying children with learning disabilities and giving them more interventions at a younger age. So that's why those numbers are going down. And again, going back to what Tesfa said, you can have a learning disability. Let me back up. We asked ourselves 2 questions at every initial meeting and every reevaluation meeting. The first one is, does the child fall into one of the 13 categories? So they may fall into learning disabled and OHI for ADHD. The second question is, okay, the answer to that one is yes. The second question is, are they in need of special education services? Quite often the answer to that question is yes, no. Because you can have a learning disability, you can have attention deficit, you can have a speech and language impairment, but it doesn't mean that you need special education services, because the buildings have created such strong building level supports and systems in place that they're supporting the children where they don't need to come to special education. So I think that's a credit to why our learning disabilities numbers have gone down. And I also think that maybe I'm not concerned about the OHI numbers going up, because to me, what is the most important piece of it is that our children are getting what they need. So,
Thank you. I have 2 more questions, sorry. As you mentioned, the audit, a big piece of the audit looked at your role and said that you were too involved or spending too much time, and it wasn't meant critically of you, you were trying to do it all.
Doing too many meetings.
You were doing too many CSE meetings. I think the report said 1 to 2 hours responding to parents via phone, email, et cetera, et cetera. And then I know when you and I met, I'm going to say it was in May or June of last year with several, I think with some SEPTA representatives and with Superintendent Sinanis, we talked, and you gave a number that sort of floored me, that you had, I think, been, I thought it was 185. Okay, I guess by the end of the year it was 200 CSE meetings, and each one with an IEP, yada, yada, yada. So I was really happy to see that you're redefining the role. So I guess my question to you, because I know you said you had to train everybody and all that, this year, what number are you targeting for yourself? And I'm hoping it's a really small number, because we got to get you into that director position and not everywhere else, because that, I've read this audit, it's dirty and disgusting. That's how many times I've been through it. It's all about the director being the director. So what are you anticipating? I know we've hired all the staff you've asked, we've gotten everything in place.
So what we're anticipating, and what Tesfa and I would like to do once we have everyone trained again, and again, I'm not going to feel comfortable turning over people running meetings if they're not going to run meetings the way Tesfa and I feel comfortable. So a lot of time is going to go into training and modeling and at least in the beginning. What I would ideally like to do is I would like to be the chairperson for initials.
Well, I'm trying to get to a number. So how many would that be?
That depends. I mean, sometimes we have 20 initials, sometimes we have 45.
Sorry, when you say initial, so that means somebody brand new to all this?
The first meeting, yeah, that's what I would like to do. And I think eventually, what I'd like to do is to be able to even split those initials with TESFA and I. So I think TESFA is able, at this point, to take on all the reevals, which can be looked at as initials, because you're starting the process again and you're making the decision again. But I think he's incredible and amazing, and we have the same philosophy. We kind of think the same way. So I think I have no problem releasing all of that to the reevaluations to him, and if we could split the initials, that would be ideal.
Great, because like I said, I think that's such a key to this audit. And then the last thing, and it's really, I guess, more of a comment than a question, is, one thing that now that, as a board member, I wear a financial hat as well, and I know we spoke a little bit about this last year, that I would love to see us move in the direction of a district like Pleasantville or Ardsley that has said, when we send children out of district, it hurts. We don't love it for the kids, and it costs us a lot of money. And the best way to go is to grow programs in-house and, identify where our needs are. And we serve our children better. We're selecting the staff. They stay here. They're with their community members. We don't pay the out-of-district busing. We don't pay the tuition. And in the best of worlds, we pull in kids and we make money. So it's a win-win all around. I didn't see that reflected in the 5-year plan. And I'd like to hope that that's the direction where we're going.
Well, it wouldn't be reflected in the 5-year plan, because remember, the 5-year plan is not what's coming forward. That district plan is very confusing. And
it is very confusing.
Very confusing. So the district plan is a tedious, time-consuming thing that the state is asking us to do. It does not project anything of where we are going.
Even though, but it's stated from now to 2023.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
It makes no sense whatsoever, because it's a snapshot of time, and then you don't do anything again until 5 years.
Okay.
So it's an odd thing, but we're required to have it. And we haven't had one for many, many years. So and that was important to me
so
to
it
get
wouldn't
that
be in
in
this plan.
compliance. So that, I would take that plan as just saying, that's where we were of June 2018. And that's what it is. But to go back to your question, in our new initiatives, the first thing that I think, when we looked at where were most of our children out of district, what were their disabilities that they were out of district, most of them are falling under the category of OHI and ED. So that's why one of our new initiatives is working very closely with Melissa and Lou to really bring in a TSP program, which is a therapeutic support program. So that would be...
That's one piece, and hopefully we can keep...
Yes.
I mean, I hope it's the wish of the department to
yes,
keep bringing other
obviously I wouldn't
areas
like to have any children out. But I think that's where, when we looked at where were most of our children out, it's in the upper grades, and it's to really build. Now, to come back at your fiscal, which you may not want to hear, but to build a really strong therapeutic support program, and to be able to feel comfortable bringing back children with mental health concerns, you need to have a solid staff. And that's, and I don't want to bring back children that would fail. So we would want to make sure that we were really putting in a strong program. And we've seen it. Pleasantville has an amazing TSP program. I've gone with the guidance counselors last year to look at some in Rockland County. So it's something that we're definitely committed to. Melissa is very committed to it. Not to say Lou is not, but Melissa talks about it a lot. And so that really would be my number one goal.
Great, and thank you for all this work.
Yes. Okay. Can you speak a little bit more about what RTI is looking like in the middle and high school? I know K through 4, as mandated by the state, that's pretty tight and buttoned up. But can you speak to a little bit more, besides the programs that you mentioned on the computer, can you speak of what we're doing to sort of differentiate between, is it just something that needs more tiered support, or is it something that needs special education services?
So I'm going to actually say that probably the best people to speak to about that is the middle school and the high school building administration. So I don't know if you want to reach out to them, or they have been working really, really hard on building these plans and putting a lot of things in place. They spent a lot of time with Jim Wright, and I don't want to speak for them.
No problem.
Yeah, so they deserve their time in the spotlight as well for that.
And one more question for you, Laura. I really appreciated that you mentioned clearly defining the roles for TAs and for aides, because they are the foot soldiers and we should all have the highest admiration for them. Can you talk to me what we're doing to ensure that integrity of those structures, meaning that they are staying in their rooms and not being pulled for substitute work?
That goes back to really what the building administration, in terms of where we said it was ongoing, because one of the things that they did say was the issue with substitutes. Mm-hmm. So the building administration has really been working to be creative in finding different ways to cover classes.
But that's still of an utmost importance, right, to keep them in their rooms where they're servicing those kids?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to say we've never done that.
Right. Okay. I know the middle school hasn't. Right. Thank you.
To add on, I mean, it's not really related, but sort of with the TAs. In the beginning of the year last year, we did a needs assessment survey with them, and we also dedicated one day of PD with them, after school PD, where we had them go through every child's IEP that they worked with. We did sort of like a tutorial of the IEP, and they sat down with the IEP, they went through every IEP, they looked at the kids' needs, and they worked on getting strategies for that. So
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's something we want to continue this year. It's definitely,
And we
for sure.
we left a lot out of here because you would have been here for days, but one thing I want to do is they actually said that was the most profound professional development they've ever received.
In the beginning of the year, we did they did an assessment,
Of
survey
what they needed.
of what they needed, and then based on that, we met with them, I think in November, and we worked with them, and it's ongoing, either from the behavioral consultant, the psychologist, myself, Laura, and I, like, we'll go in the classrooms and we'll work with them, and we're strategic on who we place them with, what classroom we place them with. We speak to the principals, and we try to make those thoughtful,
Right.
decisions.
Yeah, especially, in the lower grades, thinking about you don't want to take away from the structures that are in place,
Right.
the routine. So I just wanted to make sure that was on your mind, because I do think that's really important. Thank you.
You may have left a lot out, Tessa and Laura, but you put a lot in. And I really want to thank you for all the work you've done, that you've been doing, and for presenting it to us in this way that's really easy to really see what's been happening and how I know it was a huge undertaking where you had to begin with the report, and I know we have a lot of work to do, but I think this is, thank you very much.
And I just also want to thank, the building principals and the parents as well, because it's been a team effort. The teachers, the staff, the parents, everyone. It's really been a team effort. I know Tessa and I are doing our end, but the audit was titled a special education audit, but there's lots of pieces in there that other people picked up on. So, thank you.
So, is the board? So we'll open up for public comment right now, and we're going to come back to the auditor's report. Yeah. So I want to open up for public comment. You'll see a brand new clock we have here, 3-minute clock.
That's a clock.
In case you're all
We were asked, do you want small, medium, or large? We're extra large. We will not hold you strongly to that, but we will hold you pretty closely to strongly to that. There's not a loud buzzer that goes off. But,
Hold yourself to it.
so please, if you have a question, because we are videotaping, if you could please come up to the microphone, or if you've got a comment to make, please come up to the microphone. All you need to do is just state your name and if you're a resident of Hastings. Okay, look at that.
Clock scared me.
quick. Go grab the auditor.
No, I think she's gone.
I don't know.
I think she left.
Oh, I think she's right at the door.
I think we've got plenty here to do without the auditor. Doug?
Rob McQueen, I live at Hastings.
Janine, it's better. Don't worry about it.
I'm just confused because I came expecting to see the plan, and I'm glad we had a
Rob,
little
did you
conversation.
introduce yourself?
I did, Rob
Okay,
McQueen at
sorry.
Hastings. Thanks. And I wasn't sure, I thought when Dr. Wilson talked about the setup for it, it wasn't going to be about the audit. It obviously was about the audit. It just seems like we're spending a lot of time trying to answer what the plan is for the audit. I would derisively say we're checking the box on, oh my gosh, we're responding to this audit that we got, but I don't really see a plan. And I don't see a cultural plan. So I understand the plan, it sounds like the plan's not really a plan. I thought we were going to see a 5-year plan that talked about, a draft of a plan that talked about how special ed and the culture in this community, in this district, was going to affect or be affected by the special ed plan in terms of what we're going to do. So I'm just confused by it. I think a lot of the community probably is.
Yeah, just a comment on that, Bob. We had a conversation about what to expect tonight, and my reference to a 5-year plan is to do with the strategic plan that I'm going to be involved in this fall and into the spring, doing that. And I know that this is very compatible with what you guys are trying to do. Matter of fact, that you thought that was going to be very helpful to you. So as I'm working for the district to develop a 5-year strategic plan for the entire district, an important piece of that will definitely be the special ed piece. And so that's coming. It's coming down the road. But we had hoped, I think what had happened was that a lot of people were disappointed that they were hoping to see our speaker, the consultant that had done the original audit, was originally planning to get here sooner than later. And then when she couldn't come, and she figured out her schedule, she's going to come down here next month, and as I said before, she'll be back here beginning of December. So in lieu of her being here sooner than later, we thought it was best to respond to her recommendations in terms of what's been done to achieve them. She will be down. These two and our principals and others will be back throughout the year to give progress reports. And then before the year is over, we'll unveil our 5-year plan, which is taking all that they're working on and projecting it forward as to how it gets done. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Lowengart. I'm also one of the co-presidents of SEPTA. So I stand here, I want to thank Laura and Tesfa because I know how much work you've put into this, and I know it's been a labor of love and a labor of a lot of other things. So thank you. One of my questions is there's a lot of focus in the audit about the structure. So we're looking at the administration of things, how things are organized, what the MTSS is, the continuum of services. But we've also added so many programs to the district at once, and we're layering on a lot of programs, both in terms of splitting the Learning Lab or the ICT programs in the high school. How are we ensuring that with that growth, we're gaining depth? Because to your point that each kid learns differently, how do we make sure that all of these programs meet our kids' needs and we're being efficient about it? Because there is obviously so many places we need to hit. If you can talk a little bit about that.
So my first, and Tess would jump in, but my first response is I always go to the child. So to me, the first response is what, am I up?
I was in my 2 minutes.
My first response is to what is successful? Is it working for the child?
I mean, no, but I mean more just in terms of, so we create, for Hillside, for example, there's a resource room, there's 2 learning labs, there's the new reading program. Can you talk a little bit about the PD, the teacher training, the teacher support, in order to make sure that all these programs can actually meeting the kids' needs and helping them make progress? Because, particularly in response to the achievement gap. So how are we able to create these programs against the IEPs and support the teachers to make sure that the programs are working?
And I might not, I'm sorry if I'm missing the question, but I think we'll know if the programs are working, if the children are making the gains and the progress that we would hope. To support the teachers, for Lindenwood Bell, they were at a 3-day training over the summer, and we purchased them all the materials, so they were at a very intense training over the summer through Lindenwood Bell. LLI, they're in a 2-day training right now, and we've supported them by giving them the PD and the materials needed in order to implement the resources. We support them through ongoing professional development in terms of we had staff members that attended trainings this summer for preventing academic failure, as well as EdMark. So I think, and I'm sorry if I'm not answering your question, but I think the support is we're providing them the professional development, the tools, the resources to implement them, and then it's just monitoring the effectiveness of the programs in terms of the child's response to them.
I think where we look at, for the most, direct source of information, we have to look at their IP, and we're going to look towards their progress, towards their goals. And I think that's where the goal works comes in, and as far as the IP directs progress monitoring. Based on that is really what's going to drive, aside from report card grading, of course, but we're going to look at their goals and their progress towards their goals. That's going to be the key indicator of how successful the programs are.
And will you be doing that during progress report periods throughout the year? Or are you planning to look at it at the end of the year as you assess what you need for the following year? What's the plan on that?
So
ongoing?
It has to be ongoing. And even with the IP direct and the goal works, like, the systems gives you, so safe as 4 weeks, it's like, all right, you haven't monitored the goal, like it gives you updates. So our end is to do definitely in-class visitations, observations, and to work with the teachers to make sure those goals are being monitored. And if there's progress, and if not, then we have to go back to the drawing board to say, all right, what's not working, what is working, and redesign from there. So it's never...
That's what I think, that's where the
crux stops.
And which I think is exactly of what an RTI plan is. You put something in place, you put an intervention in place. If the child doesn't respond, then you try something else. If the child doesn't respond, you try something else. You're never just giving up. So I think that's really, it just kind of mimics going, through an RTI. It would mimic the same thing, the same process that they would do.
From special ed, our direct indicator of success is the goals. Their IP goals and their progress towards their goals. And, we don't want to wait until December to say, well, Jimmy's not me. We want to be ongoing and keep an eye on it like a hawk, because if not, things fall apart.
So I guess what I'm asking is like where the programs and the goals meet, because you have this group of kids and they all have their different goals, whether it be reading 10 sight words or being able to do 3 math problems independently, and then we've layered on all these programs. So how do we make sure the programs and the goals are aligned in the right way?
And I'm going to jump in. It's not even another layer. Is you have the variety of goals, you have the variety of levels, but you also have the variety of learning styles. We cannot forget that children learn differently. So you can have 2 children that have the same exact goals, the same exact disability, and they are not going to respond to that same program. So it's constantly monitoring that as well.
Yeah, because I think from us, in SEPTA, we get a lot of questions of, how is this program going to work for my kid? So I think understanding how these programs are being monitored against kids' goals and whether or not they're effective, and I think the new reading program obviously takes that into account because...
And they are built in. They have built-in testing, monitoring themselves.
Okay.
And I would just like to add, as a board, we do have a board policy, 4220, on educational initiatives, and it's up to the superintendent to determine what's an initiative, but if something is, there's a whole protocol we have asking exactly what you're asking, which is the right question. We're bringing in something new. How are we assessing it after, say, a year's time to see if it's working? And I think all schools kind of struggle with this. We bring in new things and we don't really assess the way we should. Again, I speak for the Royal We of New York State, but I think it is a really good discipline to get into, and there is some guidance in this policy.
Yeah, because I think this... it's almost part of the 5-year plan, right? Is how we monitor, assess, revisit, and go. But this is a good start because it's kind of laying the foundation to be able to have those systems in place. But just to understand where we're at right now.
Technology, even IP Direct, you can sort by goal, you can sort by student, so you can sort the data to see what's working and what's not working. So if we look at the elementary school, for example, we say, all right, let's sort how many kids have reading instruction and their reading goals, and we can say X amount has made progress, X amount didn't make progress. That's a good, in my opinion, I think a good barometer of the success of the reading instruction. And that's what we could look to say, all right, maybe it's not the program, maybe it's the staffing, maybe it's the, there's different variables we have to look at when we make those decisions. And
There was also somebody at, I think it was, where did we have those blue index cards? At one of our meetings last year.
Oh, the last committee meeting.
Somebody put in submitted a question, and I took the question back with me because I thought it was such a great question. Are we going to look at trends and goals, of reading goals, to see, are we not hitting, and I'm just going to give an example, are we not hitting main idea? Are our children who have a goal of understanding main idea or character or setting or even developing a thesis if you want to go up to the higher levels, are we consistently not hitting that goal across the board? So that is one of our other things that we're adding to even dig deeper into our goals. Are we systemically not hitting certain areas? Is there a gap in that type of, which is I think what you do when you analyze the ELA, the New York State ELA and math test. Is there a standard that we're not hitting? Mm-hmm. Is there a goal that we're writing for children and we're consistently not, right, our children are not meeting that? Well, then we're not teaching main idea the right way.
And that starts now. You don't want to wait until November to say, all right, let's start looking. It starts now.
Can I just ask a question? I think it might help clarify what you're saying. So if I'm looking at a reading intervention class, can you talk about the numbers that are probably being serviced at once? And if, like, say, if I'm in Hillside, is it 3 children with 1 special ed teacher or 1 literacy teacher who can do sort of this very meticulous progress monitoring? Because I've done it, so I know it's very time consuming, but it's so important to actually reflecting on, are we hitting those goals? Can we talk about, in our classes, are they mixed with just children who are struggling with reading and children who have IEPs that have specific goals for reading, and who's doing the progress monitoring?
So I guess what I'll start with is the reading instruction.
Okay.
So we are realigned to the reading instruction. So right now in Hillside, every day from 8:30 to 9:10, every child that has reading instruction on their IEP is in a reading instruction group. And the groups range from, I would say, 3 to 5.
At most
4.
Right?
4.
At most. Okay. And with one either special education teacher or literacy specialist. So we even broadened. We brought in our RTI teachers in as well that are leading literacy specialists. Brought them in to allow more, to make our groups smaller.
So they're only children with IEPs
for reading.
For reading.
For reading instruction.
Okay. So is it that classroom teacher then? That specialist teacher, is it her job or his job to progress monitor, or are we bringing in help to help progress monitor?
No, so it's that person's job to monitor those 3 goals. Now, what that person may notice is TESFA is not making the progress he needs, or TESFA is not responding to this intervention. So let me go back, they're going to meet, and TESFA may be moved to a different group that has a different program that they're using. And that's kind of where it mirrors what MTSS is. You're trying an intervention, it doesn't work, you're progress monitoring, you're not seeing the goals, you're switching it up, you're increasing the frequency, the duration, and then you're trying something else. So by having this 8:30 to 9:10, we are able to have this fluid movement of children that we've never been able to do before.
Thank you.
Could I just add, because you had mentioned also the importance of training and staff development to doing things in a new way and new responsibilities. So you should know that there's been a tremendous amount of support for the staff development. And to give you some example, Maureen has found lots of money, which she's told to this group, spend it, it's important, let's do it. They've been talking to BOCES and other, Edith Winthrop and so forth to plan. They've initiated some strategic planning already this year, not strategic planning, they've initiated the staff development already this year. They're going to continue and build on that. The principals have been generous in their commitment of time. If it's to train staff, we're going to support, we're going to find the time to do that. It's really been made a priority, and I think that is a very important piece of all of this, which, by the way, was never in the original report. But we've identified it as a key and critical thing to be doing.
Are these trainings happening before we actually start the implementation of the program? Like LLI, for example, is wonderful, and I'm so happy we have it. But you talked about how training is going on now. So are they starting these programs before having training?
No. Seeing Stars happened over the summer.
Okay.
So that's up and running. But LLI, no.
Okay.
That's why we wanted it so early in September, so we could get it, and they'll be done tomorrow.
Perfect.
But no, we have not started them. And our 2 superintendent conference days, we've dedicated to the area of special education. So the one in November and the one in March.
You comment or leave? Okay. So I want to thank you both for coming in and doing a wonderful job, not only coming in and presenting this, but that's really just the icing on the cake, doing the actual work to put this together. And as Dr. Wilson said, there's going to be a lot more on this throughout the fall. And looking forward to hearing the report from Dr. Katzman, hearing the response from that, as well as the strategic planning process. So with that, we'll keep moving along, and Susan Brosi has very patiently waited here for us. Yeah. Yeah, if you aren't up to the auditor's report right now, you can feel free to
My audit's not.
take off. We're going to start that.
I have to look in my files, but...
Bond discussion, too.
I'll call
They
you.
want to stay for the bond
Oh, we'll set
discussion?
up
There is a
some
bond
time.
discussion.
Yeah, perfect.
There is a bond discussion later, too.
1 o'clock in the morning.
It's getting late. This one may be a...
2018, and that's the fiscal year end of the school district. In early August, that's a very short turnaround time in order to get for the school district finance team to get the books closed, in order to provide the financial statements in order for us to come in and audit them. So here tonight, I'm here to present the audit, and let's go to the slide 1 that I have in the handout. Our responsibility as a firm is to perform the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and ensure that the audit was designed to achieve reasonable assurance, that absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of any material misstatements. We have to communicate in writing any deficiencies in internal control and material weaknesses if we identify them, advise management of the appropriateness of their accounting policies, and communicate any fraud and illegal acts immediately if we uncover them. At the end of so it was in accordance with the 5-point plan, which is established by the state of New York. There had to be an entrance meeting, which we did in March of this year to plan the audit. There has to be an exit meeting, which we did last Wednesday with the audit committee, and then this is the public meeting. We are communicating in the financial statements, which is a 100-page document. An unmodified opinion, the best opinion you can get, was issued. The internal accounting controls were reviewed in context of the audit. There were no audit adjustments that were uncorrected. In fact, all the adjustments were given to us. They were minor housekeeping adjustments that were given to us by the district finance team during the process. There were no disagreements with management and no consultation by management with other accountants, meaning if there was differences of opinion, sometimes a client will go to another accountant to get an opinion and then share that opinion with us, but that did not occur. Our independence has not been impaired. If we go to page 3 of the slide, and I think Maureen is going to chime in with me on this slide. This is the overall high level, the financial statements for the general fund, the revenues, expenditures, and summary of the year end June 30, 2018. And as you're going to see, there are 5 columns. There's the original budget, which is the budget that was voted upon and approved, final budget, which includes any budget modifications, the actually what happened, encumbrances, those are the purchase orders issued, issued in which invoices have not been received at the year end, and any variance with the final budget as compared to the actual and the encumbrances. So, as I said, the original budget is voted upon, and we look at that budget as we're conducting our audit, and if there are any changes to that budget, it's called the modifications, we test to make sure that any of those modifications were approved by the board during the year. So let's go down the column here. where we go to net change in fund balance, which 3 lines from the bottom. Originally, it was budgeted by the district to use $3.5 million of fund balance. That was planned. That included $3.2 million from the previous year to balance the budget, and also encumbrances of $335,000. Then, during the year, there were budget mods, which were approved by the board to project that $4.3 million would be needed to balance the budget for the district for the year. And what happened was, due to very tight controls, a lot of work within the departments, a lot of work by the board, only $624,000 was needed of the fund balance in order to balance for the year. There were encumbrances of $625,000 during the year, and therefore there was a positive variance of $3 million. That's going all the way across. So actually, let's go to the top. What happened was there was $45.7 million in revenues as compared to a $45.2 million budget. There was a positive variance of $470,000, and basically that was due to state aid and charges for other services. Right, so which then arrived at $470,000 positive revenue variance. Now remember, it's best to have a positive than a negative, because it's best to budget conservatively, because if you don't meet your budget targets, what has to happen? You have to get it elsewhere, either in expenditure savings or you have to go into your fund balance. Then for the expenditures, actually there's $45.6 million in expenditures, plus those encumbrances, and when you compare that to the final budget of $48.5 million, there was a $2.3 million positive variance. And that basically pertained to savings in instruction, pupil transportation, and employee benefits. Right. Then the excess deficiencies of revenues or expenditures for the year, there was a positive $80,000. There were transfers in of $275,000 from the debt service fund, transfers out from the general fund, because that's your general fund is your operational fund, of $980,000. Special aid transfers out to $22,000 to special aid fund. Debt service $657,000, and the capital projects $300,000. Therefore, this is called in government accounting is total other financing uses of $705,000. Therefore, when you take your revenues, less your expenditures, less your transfers in and out, there was a use of $624,000, a net decrease. Add that to your beginning fund balance of $10 million to arrive at a $9.3 million fund balance. Okay? Now, everyone might say a $9.3 million fund balance, which is like your fund equity, right? It seems like a lot of money. But let's look on page 4.
Before we go there?
Sure.
Very quickly. There's, for the beginning of year fund balance, between original budget, final budget, and actual budget?
Yes.
3.5, 4.3, and 10?
Yes.
Why is that number not the same?
Oh, this is, so what this is just taking the 3.5, that's not the fund balance at the beginning. That was the use showing that you plan to use 3.5, you plan to use 4.3, right? You only use 624. And then you add that to the beginning fund balance of 10. The 3.5 and the 4.3 is just to zero those out, because it doesn't go to the end. It's just a balancing thing. It's a way of showing it. It's not the presentation. I didn't create the presentation. It's in government auditing standards. It's showing that at the end you plan to use $3.5 million in your budget. If you go to your original budget for the year, you'll see that you plan to use 3.5. Then it just zeroes it out. Then plan to use 4.3. That just zeroes this out. The important column is the actual. The net decrease for the year was $624,000. Your beginning fund
beginning year. So the single number here that's the true beginning of year balance
is the $10 million.
Is the 10, and the other two numbers to the left.
So we had a decrease, or overall year to year, we had a decrease in fund balance from
by
the prior year. Yeah.
Yes.
And had we not transferred in the 275 from debt service, we would have had a closer to $1 million decrease in our general fund balance. So
Yes.
we are going down in our general fund balance.
Right. Right. And the only reason we put this original and final there is for you to see, the swings.
Thank you.
Then below, on the next page, is a breakdown of your fund balances for all your funds. Remember, you only have you have a general fund, which is what we're really the main fund, the operational fund, but you have other funds, the capital projects fund, you have other funds, you have the school lunch fund, you have the debt service fund, but here we're going to emphasize the general fund, which is the first column, which adds down to the 9.3. But remember, that general fund has many buckets, okay? So the restricted, these are items that the board, throughout the years, what they approved, the different buckets that had to create for special items, such as tax certiorari, employee benefit accrued liability, retirement system contributions, debt service, repairs, future capital projects. Now, as part of the audit process, when monies go in and out, or when a bucket is created, we're not attorneys, but as the process, we look at the legal substantiation of creating that bucket. Because if you don't pay tax certs, then why have a bucket that pertains to tax certs, okay? And then we look at if monies are going in the buckets or coming out of the buckets, that they were approved and used for those purposes. So, and then these assignments here, those are what we call encumbrances, and those are purchase orders issued and outstanding in which invoices have not been received. It's basically taking the budget, and when you close out the year, there might be those purchase orders that are out there, that you're not going to get the invoice till the next year, but they're charged to the prior year's budget. So we look at those items as well. And then, at the end of this fiscal year, for the 18-19 year, $3.2 million was built into the 18-19 budget to be used from this year to balance that budget. And then unassigned is what we call free and clear, really your rainy day funds. And that unassigned amount, in accordance with state education law, can be 4% of your subsequent year's budget. That, in your subsequent year's budget, which would be the 18-19 budget, is $50.5 million. But that unassigned amount of $1.6 million is 3.3% of the $50.5 million. Okay, so you're under the 4%. Okay?
And that's typically, we're at 4%, so like our unassigned balance has gone down.
Yes. Okay?
So that kind of, we have to just be mindful of, because we use that for like, most people have 4% when we're at 3.3.
Right. Right. So that details all the buckets there. So when you look at a fund balance of $9.3 million, okay, you have to realize that the unassigned, the free and clear, is the 1.6. Okay? All the others are established for different purposes, which you use throughout the year, but then we look to see what approvals are made when those are being used. Let's go to the next page. Now, we focus tonight on the fund level, because the school districts, in accordance with government accounting, you have a fund level, and that's basically your operational level, right? But then there's an entity-wide level, which brings you more to a commercial industry, which means on your fund level, it's really near-term revenues and expenditures, inflows, outflows. Entity-wide level, you have accruals for long-term items on there. But one item that is out there is the other post-employment benefit obligation, in which the district gets an actual report to determine how much that amount is. And we always want to make sure that you circle back to that. And this is, there are inactive employees currently receiving benefit payments. Those are your retirees, okay, which are getting the benefits for other post-employment benefits. There's 136 of them at the district as of this evaluation by an actuary.
This is health insurance.
Yes, and the actuary, we do not do actuarial determinations. This is a separate actuary report that was generated and we reviewed. And then active employees of 256. So the 392 employees as of the date of the valuation, and that your total liability, present value of that liability, is $60.74 million, right? That's the projection of what that liability will be. That is not on your fund level statements. On your fund level statements, those payments for those benefits are pay as you go. This is just so that you measure your liability. a lot of times people say, what is our liability like compared to other districts? That's very, you really can't just take that number and compare it by district, because remember, each district has a different composition of those who are active employees and those who are retirees. So it's very difficult to compare.
And also, it goes by your contract, so with different districts, how much they pay for retired people's benefits, it has to do with that, has to do with the age of your employees. And so, like, again, we work with the actuaries to create these reports every year, and they are based upon each contract, and that is factored in.
Yes.
Just health, not pension.
Just health insurance, yeah.
Just health insurance, yes.
And you can see on that sheet, the benefit payments, so the current payment we made for retirees this year for health insurance was at $1.3 million. So we do count it, the accounting of it is like a real-time payment, so that's why it shows that negative, because that's the payment we actually made this year for our retirees for their health insurance.
Yes, right, that's exactly 1.3, right. That's what was paid out.
Yeah,
right, exactly. Then, as a part of the audit, what we do is we review the controls to see if we can rely on the internal controls, because anyone can have a whole book of controls and say, these are our controls. But you know what? If you don't practice those controls, then it's useless to have the book, right? So what we do is we test the controls, the financial controls, and we see if we can rely on them. But as a result of those tests, we produce a separate report, which is a separate booklet that you have all received, and just giving what happened here, there are degrees, which the lowest level is called a control deficiency, the next level is significant deficiency, and the next is a material weakness. Any deficiencies were basically control deficiencies, mostly housekeeping in nature. We had presented those to your finance team, and they're in the process of writing response to that.
Most of, if you read it, just has to do with our extra classroom activities. Every year we have inactive. Anything that, if there's a club that, like, for $400 and spend inactive, that's considered a control deficiency. Like, that's considered deficiency.
Yes.
So if you look, like Susan said, they have to report those. Technically, Hillside is not allowed to have an extra classroom fund. We've had it from like 50 years. It's under state law, you're not allowed to have one. We've been running one. We just kind of acknowledge it, but it's written up as something that it's a, so I think everything, Susan, was related to that. There were three tech things we had
to document your technology plan.
And that the technology committee should have create a charter for what their roles and responsibilities are.
Yes.
So those are things, but again.
And then one having a cyber awareness training. We just thought that when we looked at your IT controls, that we did not see an indication of having a cyber awareness training for the employees. Right? So,
we haven't used that fund at the elementary school for like years. Why do we keep it?
We
know,
right, use it, yeah. Technically, extra classroom funds are really set up for clubs for kids to actually do the work and be these stewards of it. And
they use it for some other.
They use it for like their class trips and different things, and it just works better for them, like their plays. But other schools have them as well, but under state law, they should not be running.
Should be run through the general fund, right? So
almost right. The middle schools a few years back.
Yes, you did.
And things now. So, but for whatever I mean, again, we can take it back from them. We don't care, but it's something that has been sort of there for currently.
So to really have to express, though, I remember your audit was done in August. You're one of the first audits that the firm conducts. In order to have the books closed and the books available for an audit and to fare so well in an audit takes a lot of work. And I have to really commend the board and the finance team led by Maureen. And I know there was a change with the superintendents during the year. It was a lot of work. But I have to say, this is a very, you were talking about a lot regarding the special ed about communication, and I have to say there's so much ongoing communication throughout the year with us as a CPA firm, and it's so appreciated because that makes for a smoother audit at the end. And every year we do a fresh look, okay? It's a fresh look. And you had a whole new team this year from PCAF O'Connor Davies conduct the audit. So we really appreciate the responsiveness and the hard work. And we look forward to discussing your plan so we can get rid of even the housekeeping matters that are the management comments for the future.
Thank you. The one other thing, and I don't know if you know this or Maureen, but the idea of the cybersecurity assessment, we discussed that last year.
So actually, Susan had presented, although like not that she has to do it, but her firm, they're a large firm, they actually have a department that does that. So you had given us a proposal, but I think there's somewhere.
I think we got bumped by a meeting. We would love to come in and do a presentation with our IT team.
And I had been reaching out to somebody as well, and then that just fell
Yeah,
through.
we had
but-
kind of, we were looking into it, and again, you just provided it like.
We have a whole
you don't have to use
presentation,
us,
yes.
but if, you know, if you can't find anybody else, you can use us, we do.
But I think in light of all the warnings that have come out, over the past year, even from like the US DOE, I think we really have to seriously consider it.
So we would really welcome to come in and do a presentation. We have it all prepared and to discuss it, so in some session.
Okay.
But thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for staying.
Oh, it was very interesting information.
Thank you, and Maureen, thank you, and your team.
Yes, Maureen, Nick, and our whole team, thank you so much. And thank you to the board, because you were very active. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Maureen. Okay. We have a conversation now around the bond proposal. I thought, one of the things we were going to use these bond meetings for was to get public comment. And perhaps Rob has a lot to say on the topic.
I don't know. I won't do that to you.
But maybe we could take 10 minutes or so now, 10 or 15 minutes, and just share a little bit about some of the thinking from the Facilities Committee. And I don't know if either of you want to kick off and...
I mean, I guess we can talk about what we spoke about the meeting earlier, how we're in the FAQ. You can speak to that.
Yeah, so we talked about an FAQ a little while ago. Maureen's going to send out the first draft of it tomorrow. We'd like to get it out by Wednesday, so that I think there's going to be an article in the Enterprise about the bond. It would be great when people read the article to be able to go somewhere and get some answers to questions that they might have. So we'd like to get that up before Thursday. So when you see the questions, respond that day so that Maureen can turn it around pretty quickly. And if you have any other questions that you have in mind, I don't know if you got many from other board members. I didn't see many, but if you have any other questions, the FAQ is going to grow over time. I think that right now it's pretty high level, and I think as we go down the road over the fall, I think we'll start getting a little bit more specific as we start digging in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, so I think we wanted to put something out there because we know some people, as they hear about it, they may be thinking, didn't we just do a bond? And some, questions like that may come up. And we just, like Jeremy said, want to keep it high level, just kind of start outlining the reasons why we would need to do a bond again. If some people are thinking we just kind of concluded one, what may be included in that, and just kind of the benefits of planning and doing bonds and the financial benefits of doing it. And, this maybe highlighting why we're thinking of potentially doing a vote in February or March as opposed to the May time. So there's kind of like, we've decided to kind of keep it pretty open because we don't want to lock ourselves into any particular project at this point. And I think the Enterprise, because they picked up on the last meeting and the presentation by the architect, so they're just kind of highlighting that, and they understand that it's very in its elementary phases and no decisions have been made. And as we go through, even the baseline, some of the baseline proposals, we're going to be delving further into them and really working to present a more refined work. And then as that grows, we'll be adding more questions about why some of the things we're thinking about, right?
Another thing we talked about I think would be helpful is to really dig in on what are the major issues that we're trying to address. And is it space? Is it, what's the balance of class size versus the space issue? Because the space issue is a major issue because of small class sizes. Is there a willingness to have larger classes, and then the space issue isn't as much of an issue? And, Lauren brought up a great point over email around the topic around school lunches, and does that factor in? And so I think, we don't have much public comment, so maybe we can sort of have that discussion around, what people think is sort of the driving issues or the major issues that we should be focused on.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that is going to be just a critical thing to tease out the rationale for why we're doing it versus the solution. I think in some ways it's a little strange to have an architect come and present a bunch of solutions when it doesn't feel as though we've all, I mean, obviously, the pointing and some of the basic maintenance stuff is very clear. It has to be done. You don't need a strong rationale. But when you talk about additions and tearing up auditoriums and adding, it sounds like interesting stuff. However, I think we really need a clear articulation of the issue. For example, the stuff that Lauren brought up around school lunches in the elementary school, that's the problem. One solution is a cafeteria, but there may be multiple different solutions, and I think we just want to decouple the issues from the solutions, realizing there may be multiple solutions. Some of them are facilities-based, some of them are other potential solutions-based. So I just think, and I'm curious when the article comes out on Wednesday, how much of that's going to be just based on the architect's report versus a clear articulation of the issues?
Well, I think it wasn't when the reporter actually called the district, and I tried to really clearly articulate that these are just some big ideas. Obviously, as it was, as we spoke about the Hillside addition, that obviously she heard the architect speak about, the locker rooms, and the middle school auditorium, which I would say are like kind of the three larger type items that were brought up, and kind of giving her like a little bit of rationale, but saying that these things are just very preliminarily, looked at. The auditorium she understood because she was aware of the condition. Not like personally going up there, but she's heard us speak about it before, and I guess she had been up there many years ago, so she kind of understood that. I spoke to her just about, we're finding ourselves a little bit tight at Hillside and not knowing what the growing population is why, again, not to say we're doing it, but that was why it first even came up as a topic. So I think she understands, like, I'm hoping, she's, told me some of the things she was writing, and it seemed like consistent with that. These are why some of these ideas are even being discussed at this point. The cafeteria, at that point, it was just, when I said in terms of the addition, the idea was just thrown out there because if you're going to do an addition, maybe then you would add it. But there was no other real rationale.
Yeah, I don't know how the article will address it, and I do suggest you maybe communicate with Jackie Lupo tomorrow.
Well,
I'll give her a call tomorrow.
And have her show it to you.
She wanted to see the tape of tonight's meeting,
Okay.
just in case there was anything else.
Yeah.
Well, there really won't be that
so she
much for the article, I don't think, but I think it's important in a way that we dial back a little bit, because I think a lot of this started, I think the people who were involved for a while were aware of a lot of the issues of why this came. For a lot of people in the community, this is going to feel like it came out of thin air, like, what do you mean we're doing a bond? But I think that if people understand the workings of it in terms of the buildings, and especially the things that we need to do in the buildings, I think that's the place where we have to start. And then we have to get down to what you're talking about, Doug, is what are the what questions are we trying to address, what are the problems, and then how do all these different plans that we've engaged the architects about help address it.
And I just want to say,
that's how she picked up on it. It wasn't something that anyone here called. There were two who's going to report out based upon what she just saw at that meeting, which I was trying to get her to kind of...
And I just want to say, the part of the story to me that has always resonated louder than everything, it's not so much that the ceiling is falling on us and we have to act now. To me, it's the state is offering us cheap money, and I don't know how long that's going to stay.
We really highlighted that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, to me, that's the story. We have an opportunity. We have really old buildings. These buildings, we're sitting in something that's over 100 years old here, and it shows. Mm-hmm. And we have a chance, do the work now. We're going to have to do it at some point. That, to me, is the story, 58 cents on the dollar. And it saves your taxes.
It's a chance to really invest in the future of our schools.
Right.
Just like the strategic plan is in thought, this is in our facilities a way to do that. I think they go hand in hand with each other.
Yep.
But I will say, I think it's really important to piggyback on your comment, Lisa, that I think it's also important to really share with the public the two sides of that coin. There's the cheap money. There's also the really attractive current borrowing environment. But then there's also, we don't want to just take money for the sake of taking money. We have to have the strong rationale. So obviously, the two of those go together, and I think there's a very strong story for both of those. So we'll have to continue to make that point.
I think it might be good for the board to identify the specific objectives of the bond.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, for example, you were mentioning the report earlier this evening, and another instance where it was mentioned that they would, what they would love to do is to have more inclusion, including bringing students back to the home district, which would be cost-effective, would save money, and provide a better educational experience. In particular, the therapeutic support program was mentioned, and there could be others. But guess what?
Big space.
This space. Whose classroom are you going to take away from whom, or are you going to need to build more space? I don't know. It has to be considered. Whether that's an objective of the bond or not, it would be good to decide. And what are the other objectives and what are the priorities?
One of the things I showed tonight, and actually I want to, because I noticed in one of the columns that third grade number wasn't right, so it's not flowing out correctly. I had shared with some of the board members who came to the facilities committee that we do have the software that blows out demographic studies, and it's based upon live birth sales data. It's actually pulled from state resources, and looking at that based upon the live birth data in the village in the last 5 years and projecting it out, it actually shows a steady increase of growth through Hillside. This year, actually, our number was even still, even with using that data and growing the number, we still were like another 10 over the projection. So then it kind of recalibrates based upon the actual. But that being said, based upon the live birth data, it looks as though we're going to continue to have incoming kindergartens anywhere between 122 to 130 for the next 5 years. And that's based on live birth. That's not based on me creating these numbers. It's based upon live birth data of this village.
Well, one thing I did ask, and I can't remember if I asked it to you or the whole board, is can we look back? We have eliminated some classrooms to create office or whatever. Can we look back and review that and to see if that, I know I'm causing you a nightmare with this, that in lieu of whatever space issues, is that something we want to address? I have asked for the cost of portable classrooms.
Joe knows we're still waiting on that. Joe knows, Veronica, it's funny, the state, you actually have to go through a process, and they want to know why you're going to have them. They're want to know if we're just doing it for construction. And then, right, Joe, was remember all those questions? Because she even tried to get the answer just in terms of the process for us to get them would probably take a couple of years, but anyway, we are waiting.
Okay, and because, again, and I understand what you're saying about demographic studies, and then I hear other boards saying, yeah, we do demographic studies, and then they're always wrong. I looked at the latest enrollment data, and I did see that our K and our first grade populations, if you look at a K through 12, and you put the lowest number to the highest number, K and 1 are either the 2 least populated grades or 2 of the 3 least populated grades. That's how it read to me. So I do hold my breath about these enrollment numbers, and I do see us as costly.
Third grade's the biggest in the...
Third grade is the
No, I know,
current
but I'm looking at trends. I'm looking at, they're moving out, third grade.
But remember,
I'm
we
looking at
still
who's
had
coming in.
to, we still had to split that class for first grade because of the size of the class so that we didn't have 23 in a
Oh, no,
first grade
and
class.
I'm not, let me just be clear. I'm not saying we should grow our class size, but what I'm saying is the overall grade. For example, my oldest's grade, I think, had 145 children in that. And our K and 1, I think, are 118 and 120 something. And if you look at where we are, those are considered small grades, and that's what I'm wondering about. What's coming into the district, and I see our housing costs are going up, and to do that, you usually need 2 parents working, and I think as you have more 2-parent, double-income families, they tend, not always, but they tend to have fewer children. So I'm very cautious around this enrollment data.
You did say that the third grade has picked up 5 to 10 kids each year, right?
Yeah, we have.
Right, I was going to just say that. Every year we see...
For whatever reason, from third to fourth grade, just in terms of, I'm saying, overall trends in the district. We have, kind of interesting the last few years where we're picking up kind of pockets of kids. And I guess we were talking about just in terms of this current third grade. I said, wow, we're already at 140, which I actually have to update on this sheet because I don't know why it didn't pull the
Right, it's 24 in a class.
But anyway, but if they end up going 5 more.
That's a different issue.
That's,
I mean, just in terms of space issue, I know that's an immediate issue, but again, I was just curious to see, like, just based on the live birth data, are we going back down? And at least in the next 5 years, there's a potential that at least we're going to stay consistent, right?
If not grow.
be like a little bit higher. So we would have to look at the existing space and see, but we are kind of at a point, if we have a communications class next year, if we broke 3rd grade next year, we would have to take 2 of the specialist classes away. We would probably, I don't know who, I don't want to be put on the record. But there's 2 more classrooms we'd have to find next year, just based upon next year, which again is not in the bond, but I think there's a point we need to address it, because I don't think some of our specialists, even the one who was on the court this year, is too happy.
No one's going to ever be thrilled to be in a cart. Yeah.
We have a lot to keep going through. Can I just suggest a path forward, see if everyone agrees on this, that it sounds like we want to kind of get some articulation of issues down. I'll try to just, at a high level, maybe even share some with Jackie Lupo, just so she has them. And I'm happy, Jeremy, to work with you and Maureen on that if we want to get that articulation of issues. I think it's also clear that not the whole board might not all agree that that's an issue, but at least so that we can have some central repository for that, and then we can kind of bring that to the next meeting. And FAQs are obviously
the other thing that I don't know if Veronica is working on. I think we had asked her about this last time, was coming back with some other options.
Yes.
Like Hillside with more classrooms, but no cafeteria. You know.
And her ability to do that may be positively impacted by our ability to get even clearer about some of the objectives we really want to hit. But obviously, you know, you guys have already been laying that out for her, but just to continue to get tighter and tighter with that. Okay. So we have another public comment. Any public want to comment? Okay. Okay. And now Dr. Wilson's going to share a little bit about the Director of Curriculum Instruction position.
Well, I had shared a document with the board almost a month ago exactly. And I got positive feedback. It was a proposed creation of Director of Curriculum and Instruction position. And as I understand it, the position has been budgeted. It's a position that's been talked about for a long time. It's a position that has been supported by the likes of our various PTAs and SEPTA and so on. So I think it is really worth deciding if we get the go-ahead on that, we could go out and bring in a new Director of Curriculum and Instruction, or I should say, it won't be new, it would be in addition to what we've apparently had them in the past, haven't worked out, but I'm confident that we can go out and find somebody very good to bring in, and I think it would affect the school in a very positive way. I've shared before the list, I'll just read it again to refresh your memories. Majority of schools, first of all, in the county and region, that are highly performing, do have this position. This position is key to keep curriculum instruction and assessment aligned and fresh and up to date and in compliance with new requirements, which students need to most effectively lead and grow. The role also is key to professional development and ensuring that faculty get the support and training they need to prepare for new and emerging improvements. Special education audit emphasizes the benefits of the position for special needs students. Curriculum is in constant state of evolution and change in response to new and emerging instructional technology, changing state and federal requirements, community and school self-driven initiatives, new trends, and directions in education itself. We've also mentioned that the director is a liaison to affiliate with the various institutions in the area. BOCES, Edith Winthrop, the teacher centers, direct tri-state consortium and grants to make sure that we are coordinating with these organizations, taking full advantage. It's not just enough to belong to these agencies, but we should tap them to the full, oversee APPR, and that is doing everything that it should to improve the quality of instruction, undertake special assignments as may be required, such as curriculum mapping and other curriculum projects that the district just hasn't been able to commit itself to in recent years. Take leadership in developing creative new curricula that engage students and motivate them to learn and grow. Develop curricula by supporting faculty, staff, and school leadership, assist with data analysis, which is something that we've really not utilized as a resource to manage our curriculum, that we should, to the extent that it's available to do these days. Keep the Board of Education, parents, and larger community well informed on the instruction and curriculum. Having the position filled would help to recruit perhaps a new superintendent, certainly complete a team that would be likely to be more successful with the position. At the end of the day, of all the things that we do, at the very heart of everything else is teaching and learning, curriculum and instruction. And the fact that this is a fundamental need that we have, I do recommend it to you wholeheartedly. I'm sure we could go out and find somebody quite good. I would, when I was discussing this with Doug said, well, you'd have to make a promise here that if you go out and you don't find anyone who's really good, let's not hire somebody just for the sake of hiring. So I would agree with that. With that understanding, if we go out and we don't find anyone, we take a breath and we go out again, or whatever it takes, but we're going to make sure we get somebody really great for this district. That's a caveat that I would happily sign on to. But I just need a nod of approval. I mean, we've talked about it as individuals, we've talked about it as a board. It is paid for in the budget. I just need, something more than that to know that you guys want me to do this, and I'll do it. I'll go out and recruit.
Charlie, I just want to say that, there is quite a history here. We've had 4 people, all really different, and it didn't work. I strongly support this position now because of the changes that we have made in the structure, because we finally have staff now for this position, that we have a literacy coach, we have a math coach. Before we didn't, and even as 2 superintendents ago, Roy Montesano said, we were missing a layer. So now I feel that we've put that in, and I thank you for all the work you've done, and I support it in this incarnation.
That's a really good point, and don't forget now, too, we put the position into a district title. We gave it a district title, and what will go with that is the authority to really move things along.
Okay. Anybody have any concerns about moving forward in this capacity? Okay. No? Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. That's great. Business items. We've got 8 items with several more documents. You'll see as we've started numbering those, so they're a little bit easier to reference. Does anybody have any... you see a bunch of them have already been reviewed, so we're really just voting on those now, the special ed
I do have a question
report.
on special ed.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if we could pull that out. I just wonder if there's a lot of confusion about what that is with the 5-year. I was confused when I first read it. I don't know if SEPTA has looked at it and fully understands what it is. I just don't want to vote on it and then people say, what is this 5-year plan? I don't get it. Because there needs to be an explanation every time. So I just wonder if we could sort of take it out of this, maybe move it to the next board meeting and make sure that everyone understands what it is?
Just to
Is there a time?
piggyback off what Jeremy said, I think, we sort of understood it because, again, we've read the reports and we've kind of been in the nooks of it. I think what was a little bit confusing was sort of the layout, and I think some of the public comment sort of agreed with that just they weren't really sure what the plan is from this. So I don't know if maybe there's a way to just maybe ask Tesla and Laura to consolidate this into maybe something that's a little bit more easy to...
We're not talking about the PowerPoint.
Oh, no, not the PowerPoint.
I'm talking about that.
This
is a state document.
Yeah, it's a compliance
My
document.
concern, though, is that I don't think people understand. I think people look at it and they go, this is a 5-year plan.
But it's not.
That's what it's
It somehow is named that way?
That's what it's called.
It's a state
And so-
compliance document.
So we vote on it
That's required
tonight.
of the district.
And all of a
Which is
sudden people
different
go,
than
why
our
did you vote on
five-year
a
plan.
5-year plan?
It's just a record, it's a snapshot record that's required by the state every 5 years. So it just so happens that we're reviewing it at the same night
That we're talking
our
about
department
ours.
I
talked
understand
about
that,
our audit.
but if
It's
we
different
could-
from our 5-year plan that Rob
could
is...
vote
So it's
on it
different than this, you're
next-
saying?
Yes.
Next
Right.
board
Okay.
meeting, if there's not a timing issue, why not make sure that SEPTA, for example, understands
Why not just make
That's
it
just-
clear
Well,
right
so
now?
SEPTA, that document has been on the agenda for 2 weeks now. This is the second week, and they've reviewed it both times. And they've not raised it, and it's really a 10,000 foot or 30,000, depending on how high you want to go. It's not 500.
It's a clear statement of our
Civil Aeronautics
services,
Board.
Yeah.
services that we provide, and the students that we have by classification. It's a factual document as opposed to an aspirational document. It's a factual document as to what we do in our district and who do
I
we do it
understand what it
for
is.
as of a snapshot in
There
time.
needs to be this explanation every time that someone looks at it.
But it's not, the name of it's not going to change. It's always going to be called what it's being called, because that's a state name for the document. So if someone's confused now, we'll explain it. If they're confused in 2 weeks, we'll explain it then. In 4 weeks, we'll explain it then. But I don't know that the document's going to really change much. And there's not much that SEPTA is going to have to add to it, because it's very high level. Here's the services. It's not qualitatively saying how you're delivering the services. It's not actually talking about how you're measuring the efficacy of those services. It's just saying, here's what you deliver. I think some of the challenges and issues that SEPTA's had over the years that they're very interested in is the delivery of those. How are you taking that up? How are you measuring that stuff? So it's more of a just snapshot in
And that's what will be in our
time.
5-year plan.
Yes.
That's what will be in our, let's call that one an
How do
action
we
plan.
identify?
Let's call that one an action plan.
Okay, I
How do we
misspoke.
identify students? How do we move them through?
Right.
I mean, we have to title it this way? Like, if I'm...
It is titled
It's
this
a
way.
compliance document.
It's a
so yes.
compliance document.
It's what the state calls their plan.
That's what they call it.
Because if I haven't been to the board meeting, I look and I go, oh, district plan for special ed for 2018 to 2023.
No, it's just a compliance matter. And ironically, the state has already approved it. But they require that, the board approves it.
Yeah.
And then it's not that we even have to do anything with it other than make sure we have it in case some state inspector comes out and demands to see it.
And it does have good information in it. The actual
Yeah.
numbers of the
Yeah.
actual numbers of students by disability is there. You should read it. It's a worthwhile reference document as we look at what our actual numbers are. So it's a good document to have, but it's strictly that. It's a reference document. It's a compliance document. I think we should move
Not an
forward with
action
it.
plan.
Yeah.
Are you okay moving forward?
Good.
Sure. I'd love to see a different title on it, but
Okay, so can I have a motion to take items 1 through 8 as a consent
Oh,
agenda?
wait, I'm sorry, I just wanted to
Oh,
make
yeah.
just a nice comment. Sorry, and I promise I'll be really quick. I see Claudia Heitler is on here for the
Yes.
current events in the classroom for this year, and I just want to say that that is something that started as a PTSA grant several years ago. She did 1 grade, then she did 2. If any of you have not had the opportunity to watch what she does with kids, she is extraordinary. She can take the most complex news issues and get 3rd graders excited about it. So I am just so thrilled that we are now funding this as a district. And again, shout out to the PTSA, shout out to Claudia.
And the teachers echo that, and speaking to some of them during back-to-school night. So thank you for giving her that shout-out, Lisa.
It was actually expanded this year. She's
She's doing
now
4
she's doing
grades
4
now.
grades.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, and it's
Yeah, we funded it this might be the 3rd year.
it's a gift to our children, it really is.
Good. Great. So do I have a motion to take items 1 through 8 as a consent agenda?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. On to personnel. We've got leave of absence.
On appointments, I need to table number 4.
Just note that. I did have pens. Okay.
Is that happening in the future?
Possibly.
Okay.
Just something came up today that had to be tabled.
And
I wasn't able to get it off in time.
Okay. So
1 through 3. And
8, well, I could just say, I can do all 8A, B, C, and D all together, right? But removing 8B4. I can do that, Janine, right? I can take letters and numbers together? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve all of 8, A, B, C, and D, but removing 8B4?
so moved.
you have a second?
Just B4, yeah, right? Just table
B4.
It's like a battleship game or something.
Yeah.
I know that's.
And who's seconding?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. We're on to the minutes from July 24th.
Now,
And
I have a
8-6.
question, because they were incomplete. And Janine, I know you said you added more. I have not had a chance to read it, and then the public comment, I think, had not been put in. Where are we with it?
They're complete for July 24th at this point.
Okay, all right. Since I know they were completed late, I'm going to just abstain on the minutes votes, because I have
Okay.
not had the opportunity to look at them.
Okay. So, the 8-6, were those complete? Was everything in there?
I just, I was there that day, and the only thing I really took notes on, because it was your board retreat, was the conversation on the first grade, and then, like I just said to Jeannie, work off minutes, because I wasn't under the understanding we were taking full minutes
Right.
of that meeting.
I think
Typically,
that-
And
I
the
think
bulk
that's
of that was, the bulk of that day, we were there for
was like
like
your
6 hours.
goals.
It was the goals. The retreat was very short, and there's really not a description of the discussion around the goals. I can't fill it in, and we didn't have a camera.
Right.
And I don't know that
I didn't
anybody
know
was
if you just
taking
wanted
minutes.
to, like, attach the, other than
Attach the goals.
attach the goals.
Maybe that may be the best we can do at this
This is what
point.
you discuss on these goals, like.
But I think we have to be hyper vigilant the next time we're not recording to really,
Right. It's just that during a board retreat, I don't think there's ever been,
Yeah,
this wasn't the retreat. It was a retreat that then segued into a board meeting, and the
Board meeting.
retreat was maybe 20% of the day.
Okay,
So that's what happened.
okay.
I mean, it's represented here. Board goals are certainly findable, so I'm comfortable moving forward with approving the minutes from 8-6. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from July 24th and August 6th?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, do we have that? Okay.
An abstention.
And one abstention from Lisa. Okay, committee reports, no student report, facilities.
Question, by the way, student, is somebody in touch with our student?
I haven't been.
Let's do a reach out to our student, because we have two, because I'm not sure that they're even aware. We always have two. We have a senior and a junior, and they're supposed to trade off. So we have Parker's brother, and we have Elliot Reisman-Tremante. And by the way, I'll just throw out, it might be nice for us to meet with them and talk about how to make it, a really meaningful or, experience for them. Not at a board meeting, but we can have that aside.
Okay, we will do that.
Wait, I'm sorry, so Doug, are you going to be the reach-out person to them? Or do you want me to, because I'm the liaison to the SU? I don't
Yeah,
care.
if you
Happy
know
to.
them a little bit better too,
Sure.
so that'd be great. Just let me know.
Just taking myself a note.
Okay, finance report?
Do you want to do facilities, or is that covered?
Well, that was just
I think we
tonight.
kinda did,
That was
so
just
that's
tonight,
fine.
so I would just say that we'll
Yeah.
send something. I mean, rate really was just, we had a very quick.
We kind of covered most of it, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah, the facilities minutes are pretty comprehensive, I think. Sorry. The finance minutes are pretty comprehensive. It is.
They're very comprehensive.
We can go down through it and try to go quickly.
Do we need to go through it?
No, we don't really. if you want.
I read it. I read it as well. I'm not just being facetious. They were good minutes. Thank you. They were very helpful.
That's fine by me. Yeah, I think the key points, what we talked about, proposed next steps, look at the target dates. Hopefully we can have over the course of October and November, and targeting the first meeting after Thanksgiving, a pretty comprehensive discussion around what financial resources we have available and what the trajectory of those financial resources look like, so that we can marry that discussion along with our budgeting discussion, just to have a little bit more informed how are we funding this district view that all 7 board members, as well as Maureen, as well as superintendent, are wholly conversant in the same language. So that's really the objective here. That's the objective of those goals. When we talk about, I think I'll just jump to the questions for the board to consider, discuss at upcoming Board of Education meeting. I think that these are two good questions, and I think that they're also, I didn't think this at the time of these questions coming together, but with the passage of a little bit of time, I think that these two questions are quite complementary. Jeremy posed this concept of this flat budget challenge as a way of making this a bit of a shared process as opposed to austerity imposed by a group of 7 as much as a joint effort at thinking about not just living by a 2% tax cap as imposed by the state, but can we ourselves as a community operate within a flat budget? And obviously between efficiencies and increased revenues, and so that's a conversation that will continue in Finance Committee, and Jeremy's giving quite a bit of thought to it. Now the second question, of course, is there a maximum acceptable increase in the village tax rate that we need to keep in mind as we move forward with the bond? And I'm not going to, particularly in the interest of time, solicit thoughts around this, but do think about this in terms of as we think about the bond, and we think about, to Doug's earlier point, the objectives for the bond. There's clearly, at least speaking about my opinion, there's clearly a minimum level of work that has to be done in the buildings, and then I would say each incremental item has to have a clear objective, just as if you were going to do work on your house, both in necessary work but then incremental. So with each piece of, whether it be necessary or incremental work, there's a cost to that. So if we can't meet a flat budget, that has tax implications. If we do a bond, which I anticipate we will, that has tax implications. So when we think about a maximum acceptable increase, think about, the point here is think about the total number. Think about the total number that you could realistically sell comfortably, or sell may be the wrong word, that you could realistically explain to all of your neighbors in the food town or otherwise. And when you come up with that number that you're comfortable with, that number either needs to be split up in terms of bond, in terms of budget increase on a straight year-on-year basis, and those are sliding. If we're at 0 on budget year-on-year, there's potentially more for the bond, et cetera. So I think that those two questions marry well. I think that they should just be, they're thought questions, and we'll talk about them more, particularly as we talk about the bond moving forward. So that's it on finance. Any questions? I guess I know it's late, so.
I do, but I don't know. Not sure where we're going to go. I think we don't have to share it now. I would love to hear, though, from this idea that you get punished in subsequent years by balancing the budget in the current year, I think is something we have to think. It is a perverse impact of the tax cap, and I think we have to just be really thoughtful about how we go about that. I mean, if you think of just teacher increases in salaries are $800,000 right off the top. If we changed nothing, that means you've got to go find $800,000 in savings or increased revenues just to break even, and then does that put you in a really nasty spot in the subsequent year? I just think we have to be really thoughtful about how we go about that.
And I think that this is something that, again, I think we'll talk a lot about in finance and try to, I think the responsibility of finance this year is to try to present to the board some real quantitative data. The flat budget challenge may be one where it starts as an articulation of a flat budget, but really it's a flat budget X built-in increases in our contractual obligations.
Right.
Something of that nature.
Okay. I just want to put that caveat in there to make sure.
Yeah. And there's another, I guess, thing that I do just want people to think about, which is the reason for the two goals that I lay out there, which may just be good to frame it for you as you think about our financial picture. When we think about very quickly this review of the audit by PKF O'Connor, we were fortunate this past year in terms of drawing down, I think it was $660,000 as opposed to $3 million, right, in terms of the amount we drew down of our reserves. Yet and still we drew down of our reserves. Another point that I think I'll just highlight, that her name is Susan, that Susan made is that of what we call our free and clear funds of our various reserve balances, we're at 3.3%, whereas the acceptable maximum is 4%, and most places try to be at 4%. Part of this objective of thinking about sort of our what's available analysis is what's available after getting us back to the 4%. If you have your reserve funds fully funded to the point that you are comfortable with them, it makes it easier to operate under a flat budget. Maybe it's a flat budget X contractuals, but it makes it easier to do that because if you're off by 1 year, you know the reserves are there. If the reserves are steadily declining, then your operational flexibility goes down. So all of these things are married together, but that's what we're trying to work out.
The point that you brought up about getting dinged the next year, they brought up in the governance session about some other advocacy type issues, and I'd be interested if we've done any advocacy around that, because that's a pretty important issue that doesn't make sense, and we should really be out there with...
Talking about the tax, in terms of the tax gap?
Yeah, well, how does it work?
It's just the previous year,
If you're under
right?
2%, then the next year you actually...
The state allows you to raise...
You're not able to go back and say, well,
It's not like a rolling average.
Last year, it's kind of like either you levy in a year. So I think I was mentioning too, there was a time prior to the tax cap, we had actually lower tax rate increases, but then a lot of districts were concerned. But then if 1 year you had to go up 3%, you could, like if you had to. But then in another year, you might be at like 0.5. But once the tax cap went in, and then like if you were really capped at 2, then you kind of felt like the year before, well, I better just, levy the 2, because next year if I needed 3, I've lost the opportunity. So we weren't just levying it, we only levied what we needed on a year-by-year basis. The concern was if you lose the opportunity to levy it, then the following year your base is starting lower, which is fine, but you have no opportunity to go up like an extra percent if you just needed it in that 1 year. So a lot of people have kind of gone with the philosophy of like whatever the cap is, at the very least you're going to levy to that.
The idea is, I'm sorry.
I don't know, just correct me if you're wrong. Are you talking about the state aid and the formula that they were talking about at governance training?
They were talking about, but there's a lot of financial advocacy that I don't really hear us talking about, and I think that's a really important area of advocacy that we should probably be putting some focus on.
I'll give you a 60-second history because I know it's late. I agree with you. Here's the problem. The tax cap is wildly popular, and I worked with a group of superintendents. Actually, Chris Harrison and I, the superintendent of Irvington, drafted a statement because we were trying for this. In the tax cap, you can raise 2% or the CPI, whichever is lower. So sometimes we've had like a 0.5%. So we just wanted to say, let us raise up to the 2%, and we couldn't even get momentum around that. So so what Maureen is saying is like, right, say, we could say like, oh, we could be, this year, but then we'll be, hurt for next year. Let's add in a one-off this year, a one-time purchase that'll take us up there so we have it next year. So, but again, my 60 seconds is, there is not a whole lot of momentum out there on the legislative front to change this because people like it. And like I said, we tried, group of superintendents and activists, and we couldn't get it off the ground.
There is a ton of advocacy. I mean, my group of people, we meet with the legislator body like multiple times a year, and to Lisa's point, tax cap is widely popular. It's tied to rent control. Is it still tied to?
I don't even know that.
It's still tied. When they signed it, it's tied to rent control. So the two of them kind of went hand in hand. There's no support around like undoing it, because in some ways
nobody wants to do it. It's a great point. I agree with you.
About it, but that's the way.
The formula issue that they brought up too is another one.
Right.
Yeah.
Which issue?
Long Island has a higher.
I thought that's what you were referring to.
Oh, yes, because John Flanagan was the head of the Senate, and he lives there. And we also, and I won't take up all our time, but we're treated as if we have a cost of living of living higher in the state, like more northern in the state.
We're coupled with like Dutchess County, so our cost of living, Long Island's like coupled
it's not
with New York
it's not
City.
representative.
We're coupled with the Hudson Valley, which actually lowers the cost of living, which hurts us in terms of our state aid ratio.
Yeah.
So but the other piece, like I said to you, the other.
Well, there's an ad. Why is that not an ad?
Because that.
I will say, Mary Alter Fox of Pleasantville has been saying that one for a long time, and we again. It's the right point. It's tough to get it off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like WISPA or NISPA or
NISBA.
WESPA. In fact, Frank was they were doing stuff. Are we involved in some of that stuff? Or?
It's very funny. I was actually with Lisa Davies today, who's the head of whatever we're calling it, the Westchester version, and she does send us advocacy pieces from sometimes. But I haven't seen anything from her lately, so I'm not sure what's happening on that front.
I think she said there was something on the 27th.
I can tell you one thing, I don't know, Lisa, if you've heard this, they always say that you really need your taxpayers to like write letters, because me going to them, even the Board of Education, they say the most effective advocacy comes from community members, like flooding mailbox.
If we're talking legislators, it's a lot of people. It's a lot of constituents.
So maybe float this when we get to the actual bond vote. Maybe somehow try to append this as a request to, that's the time where we're going to get the most amount of public. It's just to try to append this, to have people write in about this, that our COLA is adjusted with Dutchess County as opposed to New York City, which is
I just don't even know, honestly, though, I think right now, I know with the state, I think, the state doesn't have that much money themselves, so I don't know how much money we're really going to get back.
Yeah, fine.
I mean, I'm not saying we don't want to do it, but I think, like I was saying, there is a piece with the way the funding does work, except for that piece. It does make sense when you have districts like Yonkers that are severely underfunded. Mount Vernon, I mean, we have so many districts in our area that are, they're actually being hurt more by living in Westchester, like Mount Vernon.
Yeah.
They have high property values, just like us. Mount Vernon, actually, they're have such on one side have poor population of their children, at least in school, but overall, because the property values in Mount Vernon as a whole are high, their state aid, and the same thing with Yonkers, they're penalized by being in Westchester County. So, I mean, not to get on my soapbox, but I know, like Sonia,
Yeah, so we're all right.
Andreas, through her cousins, is always like, my biggest, group is Yonkers, and I can't get that, funding.
Right, but they were even showing us numbers of even like Ossining, and that difference of being with us versus being tied with the New York City was like $3.4 million difference, or it was incredible.
We're actually hurt, but we're not. I don't know if you ever looked at some of our counterparts, and even in Westchester, we actually do better in state aid than a lot of other wealthy districts.
We do really well.
We're getting like double the foundation aid they're getting.
Yeah.
So I know it's based upon like their wealth, and our wealth is lower than theirs.
The comment is usually, how'd you guys do that?
Oh yeah, most of our, like Bronxville gets barely anything. Scarsdale gets like I think less than us, and their budget's 3 times. So in the grand, just so you know, the grand scheming of state aid, we're actually, compared to my colleagues, are like, you're doing pretty good. Yeah, so.
Okay, I think we're going to keep rolling here, so thanks for those notes. I think this format's working out well for all the minutes, so it's helpful. We've been through audit. I don't know, Tim, if there's much about
just
the waterfront.
Just waterfront committee. I did fall down on those notes. There's really only one thing that this group needs to be aware of, and that's February 2020. That is the date where the Waterfront Rezoning Committee is targeting giving to the trustees, the district trustees, clear guidance as how they should zone that land. So this is all of these meetings, and this was a broad, this most recent meeting was a broad meeting to openly brainstorm about what are the important variables to consider in the initial framing of how does one zone the waterfront parcel. So it's still very much in early stages, but it's building towards that February 2020 date. So you're just going to want to keep an eye on, have your eyes peeled towards emails that you get from the Waterfront Rezoning Committee, and as movement seems like it's beginning to sort of crystallize and take shape over the passage of time this year and into 19, it's going to be more important to really see where, what Waterfront Zoning Committee is coalescing around. The reason that date's important is because their objective is to, when they deliver something to the trustees, that it's very close to signed, sealed, and delivered. They're really not looking for it to become a discussion.
Just wait till then to jump in.
Yeah,
right?
that's gonna. They're trying to have
It's like It's like with a bond.
Yeah. So that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Yep, that's going to be one to keep our eye on. Lisa had a couple things to bring up around advocacy, the ESSA thing, and then just briefly the meeting you went to.
Yeah. Okay, and I will be brief. First, good news, and I so rarely get to say that. As I say, we're often right, but we very rarely win. The last time we spoke, you guys were all really supportive that we submitted comments to the State Education Department and Board of Regents criticizing the use of Title I monies to be used to convince parents who have opted their children out of testing to diverting that money to using it to convince parents to opt their children in. The good news is the Board of Regents and SED met today, the Board of Regents met today, and their subcommittee, which was 15 out of the 17 members, unanimously decided to remove that Title I provision, which is great. We were hearing that this was going to happen. Tomorrow, they're going to approve it. It does not really happen that it changes from day 1 to day 2. So that's really great. Somebody cynical would say, well, yeah, okay, they put in something that bad, at least we win that. But a lot of times we lose when that happens. So that's really, I'm really happy to hear that. Where the rest of it comes out, we will know more tomorrow. And then the other thing was the meeting I went to today, which I didn't expect much from, and I came out very excited. So this has to do with the changes in the tax law that happened, where our state and local taxes are only deductible now up to $10,000, and living in Westchester, which is the highest tax county in the United States of America, we need better than that. So, as you know, some municipalities, including Scarsdale School District, our state passed legislation that said, okay, you can set up these charitable funds, and if you donate to them, we'll give you a tax credit against your state taxes. So we're like, okay, great, we'll get the charitable deduction, and so we'll come out pretty close to the same. Scarsdale had set one up. The Treasury Department came out with these proposed regulations a couple weeks ago, trying to say, it's not going to work, guys, it's not going to work. So I was pretty resigned to it. Amy Paulin, who is the Assemblywoman who represents the Scarsdale area, had a meeting today. A number of Assembly members were there, and I will say our local person, Tom Abenanti, was there. And she had attorneys from Baker McKenzie, I'm sure you guys have heard of the firm, and they are taking on this case. And here's what they're saying, and again, I'll really nutshell it, that these are regulations that are not in effect, they are proposed. A lot of times the IRS proposes stuff, never does anything with them. They call them interorum. They're there to scare us. They're putting these there to say, Hastings, don't set up what Scarsdale did, okay? They may not go anywhere. In all likelihood, these will. But the good news is the lawyers from Baker McKenzie said these regulations are among the most susceptible to regulatory challenge that they have ever seen, meaning that they think they can make legal challenges to the regulations, basically saying, you didn't follow the procedure, guys. It's not about do you like Trump, do you don't like Trump. There's a process to create regulations, and you're not following it. So as an example, they said there's a lot of informal opinions from the IRS saying, oh, these things are, if you make a donation and you don't get anything tangible, you get that donation. They're changing. This is 180 degrees different, and they're saying the law actually is, they have to justify that and say what changed. It's like, oh, great. So anyway, where we want to go with this, they want to challenge this soon, rather than, there's a longer process, but it's better to challenge it soon. So they are gathering municipalities and school districts in Westchester, I think also reaching out to other high tax areas in New York. There's no mandatory contribution for a school district or a municipality, but Amy Paulin said, if you can, $1,000 would be good. So we're not making any decisions tonight. I'm just laying it out for you. So we can discuss, we can be part of this with or without the money, but do we want to give it? That's our decision. And what they would like is the comments to these regulations. This is part of building the case for Baker McKenzie. We need to submit comments because that creates a record. In the same way we did with the ESSA stuff. So this firm is drafting comments. So we don't even have to do it. And when we see it, we will look at it and decide if we want to sign on to it. There is a resolution, a draft resolution that was given to me that I gave to Charlie, and I asked if Janine could just send it to all of us. I'm not sure if that is actually the challenges, the comments that we want to submit, or that we want to go along with this. I didn't even get a chance to read it because the meeting let out at 5. So we'll see that tomorrow. But anyway, bottom line is, think about $1,000 once we sort of digest this. I will try to write these notes up so you have them, but there might be a lawsuit that could get somewhere. These guys were very optimistic, and they're, buttoned-up tax lawyers. So it was, maybe I'm a nerd, but it was a pretty exciting meeting.
Right, so there's potential. Okay, so we'll wait to read that and hear and see if there's a there.
And then we would have to discuss it at our next meeting because the deadline for comments is October 11th.
Okay. Okay.
Lisa, we won't talk about it tonight, but just so you know, I may have a question for you in terms of the ESSA funding too, because we were selected by the state to administer tests through the NAEP system.
NAEP tests?
Yeah.
Oh, those are different tests.
So, and if we don't do it, we may be subjected to losing funding under Title I, so I didn't know.
They're very different. Those are actually good quality tests, so we may want to take those tests.
We just got the email, Charlie, that was the thing that we've been going back and forth, so we were selected by the state to administer them.
Interesting.
At Hillside in middle school, and I guess, just being sensitive to, it is another test that's being administered to 4th and 8th grade students, and again, it was something new, and they were like, do we have to do this? And they kind of were like, well, you do get Title I money, and it was part of the settlement with the state of New York and the federal government that in order to get money, you would, if you're selected, you have to administer these tests.
Is it just for this year?
Yes.
Here's the thing, and again, my 60-second, the reason for the protests against the grades 3 through 8 tests is the quality of the tests and that they have high stakes attached to them. The NAEP test, and I forget what NAEP stands for, do not have stakes attached to them, and they are considered to be, the gold standard of testing. So it may be something we want. Again, I think we need to probably reach out to our principals in terms of timing and what this means, but that's a completely different kind of test than the ones that the protests take place over.
Only because, interestingly, there was also that component on the Title I,
I know,
they were saying, if you're getting it.
I think coincidental,
you have to
probably.
Okay. Only because I was going back and forth.
No, but thank you. It's a good point to raise.
Any final comments?
Did you, do you think that it makes sense to go into an executive session for 5 more minutes at the end of the meeting, or no? Just to follow up with the other one, or?
I thought we agreed on that.
But we made a decision,
Okay.
right?
I think we.
I do have one comment.
Okay, Jody?
Sorry. I just wanted to comment on the National Merit semifinalists. I wanted to thank you, Lisa, that you let us know, and Charlie announced it. Although I do think the whole explanation of how you're a semifinalist and who becomes a finalist and if you get money, it's a little confusing. But the thing about it that I just want to, for the record, say is that it is a wonderful thing, but I think we also have to acknowledge that it's, it's an honor that's really biased in favor of people who do well on tests, in favor of people who have parents or families who might pay for tutoring or test prep. And it feeds into the very thing that we often talk about here, the kind of pressure and pushiness and demands put on kids. Now it could become a demand that you should be, preparing. I mean, when I took the PSATs, it wasn't something you ever prepared for. You just took it and you saw where you were. And in a way, that was the intention. But so as wonderful as the thing it is, and it is certainly fantastic for the district, but for those children and their families, I think there's another side to it that it's really, we need to be very honest with ourselves about, that it's pretty loaded.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, meeting adjourned.